The rain came down like a curtain, hard and relentless, hammering against a patrol car windshield. Each drop was a drumbeat in the dark, a rhythm that seemed to match the uneasy thrum in my chest. I gripped the steering wheel tighter, feeling the slick asphalt under my tires and the cold damp creeping up through the seat. The call had been brief, almost too simple to seem real. Elderly woman hasn't answered her door in days. Please check. But something about the voice on the other end had lingered, low and hesitant, as if even they didn't fully believe the urgency they were passing along. My gut had tightened from the first word, a subtle warning that I wasn't going to like this night. The house came into view, shrouded in the rain like a shadow. The streetlights barely penetrated the downpour, leaving only vague shapes along the cracked sidewalks. I could see the outline of a small porch, the faint glow of a lamp struggling to break through the storm. It flickered once, then died. The darkness seemed to pulse beyond the glass, like it was breathing. I parked my car under the faint halo of another flickering streetlight, the wipers struggling to clear the rain. Every movement sounded loud in the silence, the softness of water against the tires, the click of my boots on wet concrete. My hand hovered over the radio, tempted to call it in, to confirm it was just a routine check. But I didn't. Something told me the first step inside would be different from any other call I'd made. I reached the porch, my hand brushing against the cold, slick railing. The door was shut tight, not locked, just closed, like someone had sealed themselves away, waiting. I knocked, once, twice. No answer. The air felt heavier, the rain hammering more insistently, each beat echoing in the empty street. I knocked again, louder this time. The kind of knock that leaves a ring in your bones. A sound answered me. I froze. It wasn't a voice. Not really. A faint creak, like a floorboard somewhere deep inside. A breath of movement. Too small to be human? My pulse jumped. I knocked again, my knuckles raw now, and called out, "Mrs. Dalton? It's the welfare office. I'm here to check on you." Nothing. Only the rain. Only the house, patient and still. I tried the doorknob. Cold. Locked. No key visible. I circled the house, trying windows, peering in. Faint light glimmered in one room. A flicker of motion. A shadow that vanished when I blinked. A chair or someone sitting. I couldn't tell. The rain streaked the glass like tears, and I wanted to rub them clear to see. But something held me back. The feeling that I shouldn't know what was there yet. That the first glimpse would change everything. The radio crackled softly in my ear. Static at first, then a voice, distorted, faint, almost whispering my name. I jumped, clutching the mic, but it was only the patrol frequency. No other units nearby. I let out a shaky laugh, telling myself nerves were getting the better of me, but the unease lingered, twisting around my stomach. I circled back to the front, knocked one last time, and the porch light flickered violently, then went out. I froze, hand on the door. A sound came from inside. A ring, not the doorbell. Another bell, tinny and high, echoing in the empty hallway beyond the door. My breath caught. It wasn't Mrs. Dalton. I would have recognized her bell. This was different. The ring repeated. And again, quick, relentless, faster than human hands could manage. My fingers trembled over the doorknob. Should I call in? Should I run? Something inside me whispered, "Don't open yet." But duty or curiosity or something darker pushed me forward. I turned the knob. The door opened with a groan, slow and reluctant, like it was resisting me. Inside, the smell hit me first. Not old age, not dust, but something sour, damp, almost metallic. My shoes squeaked against the floor as I stepped inside. The house was warm, oppressively warm, though the rain should have cooled it. Shadows clung to corners, stretching along walls, hiding in the folds of furniture. The hallway was narrow, lined with photographs that tilted slightly, though no breeze came through. Faces of people, smiling long ago, eyes that seemed too alive. One photograph, a young Mrs. Dalton, stared at me, too sharp, too knowing. My skin prickled. I swallowed hard and moved forward. Each step a soft scrape against the hardwood. Another sound, a soft, almost inaudible click. like a door somewhere inside closing. I froze again, straining to hear over the storm. My own heartbeat thudded in my ears. I called out, "Mrs. Dalton?" My voice sounded foreign to me, cracked and small. No answer. I followed the hallway to the living room. Curtains fluttered despite the absence of wind, casting ribbons of shadow across the furniture. Chairs pushed back, as if someone had left in a hurry, though no footprints marked the carpet. A rocking chair swayed gently, though no one was there. I stepped closer. Nothing, only the echo of the storm outside. Then the sound again, the bell, from somewhere deep in the house. Different this time, closer. I couldn't see the source, couldn't trace it. It bounced off walls, hiding, taunting. My stomach turned. Why was it ringing? And who or what was ringing it? I moved toward the sound. Hallways stretched impossibly long, bending in ways I didn't remember. The shadows shifted as I passed, and I felt them watching. I couldn't look behind me. I didn't want to. Every instinct screamed to leave, yet I couldn't. Curiosity, obligation, fear, all tangled together. A door at the end of the hall loomed. Light spilled faintly beneath it. The bell chimed again. I reached out, hand trembling. My fingers brushed the knob. Cold, ice cold, against the warmth of the house. I hesitated, then turned it. Inside was darkness, thick and solid, swallowing the light from the hall. And then, for just a fraction of a second, a movement in the corner. Too fast, too subtle to be human. A shadow flitted and vanished. My breath caught. I wanted to run, but my legs refused. My body had surrendered to whatever was waiting inside. I stepped in. The door clicked shut behind me. The bell rang once more. And then, silence. I could still hear the rain outside, but it felt distant, muted. The house had claimed the sound. Claimed me, and somewhere, deep in the shadows, I knew I wasn't alone. The air inside the house smelled sharper now, damp with mildew, warm in a way that made my skin crawl. My shoes squeaked softly on hardwood as I moved further into the hallway. The bells echoed fading behind me, leaving only a hollow quiet, the kind of quiet that presses in from every corner, thick and patient, waiting to be noticed. I kept my flashlight sweeping slowly across the walls. Photographs leaned against the frames, faces frozen in time. I paused on one of Mrs. Dalton as a young woman, her smile bright, eyes glinting with life. But the longer I looked, the more her gaze seemed to follow me, tracking every step, every twitch of my shoulder. I shook my head and moved on, telling myself it was just the angle of the light. The living room opened up before me, shadows pooling in corners like spilled ink. Furniture was arranged carefully, almost too neatly, but the cushions had indentations, like someone had been sitting there recently. I bent down to check a chair, my fingertips brushing the fabric, damp, and beneath it, a faint trace of warmth, like a body had just left. My pulse quickened. I called out again, "Mrs. Dalton?" My voice sounded fragile in the emptiness. No reply, only a faint scuffing sound, like someone shuffling their feet upstairs. I froze, straining to hear over my own heartbeat. Then it stopped. The hallway leading to the bedroom stretched out before me. The light from my flashlight bounced against the walls, catching on things I didn't expect. Small movements in the corner of my vision that vanished when I turned toward them. Curtains swayed gently, though no breeze stirred. A door creaked open slightly at the far end, though I was certain I hadn't touched it. I walked toward it, each step deliberate, careful. The sound of my boots echoed unnaturally loud, bouncing off walls in a way that made the house seem bigger than it should. Another scuff behind me, closer this time. I stopped. The air felt heavier, almost sticky against my skin. The bedroom door was cracked open. I pushed it gently. Inside, nothing. Bed neatly made. A small lamp flickered on the nightstand, though no one had turned it on. The shadows in the corner seemed to shift, brushing against the walls. I felt my stomach tighten. There was life here. Someone or something had been here. Recently, I turned toward the hallway, and for a moment, I thought I saw a figure standing at the end. Just a blur, a dark shape, vanishing when I blinked. My breath came faster now, shallow, uneven. I told myself it was my imagination. The storm outside, the adrenaline. But something about the space felt wrong. I moved to the next room. Kitchen. The smell hit me first. Stale, sour, faintly metallic. Cabinets were closed, dishes stacked neatly, but a faint puddle glistened on the floor near the sink. Water? Or something else? I stepped closer. The puddle spread, black in the light, and I realized it wasn't water at all. My stomach turned, a cold knot forming at the pit. I stepped back, heart hammering. A soft knock came from upstairs. Not a loud bang, just a gentle, deliberate tap. I froze, eyes wide. I want to call out, but the word stuck. My flashlight flickered as I lifted it toward the staircase. The stairs were empty. Nothing moved, but the knock came again. Closer, slower. A deliberate rhythm that made me feel watched. I tried to steady my breathing, telling myself I was overthinking. Houses settled, doors creaked. Sounds echoed differently at night. But even as I said it, I knew it wasn't right. This house wasn't settling. Something else was here. Something patient. Something waiting. I moved toward the staircase slowly, flashlight in front, body tense. Each step made a soft groan under my weight, blending with the occasional drip of water from the ceiling. The knock stopped. Silence. Too sudden. Too complete. My stomach sank. At the top of the stairs, the hallway stretched on both sides. Doors closed, but the shadows in the corners seemed thicker, darker than anywhere else. I passed the first room. Nothing. The second. Empty, but the floorboards creaked behind me again. I whipped around. Nothing. Just shadows. Then a soft giggle. Almost childlike, impossibly quiet, coming from the far end of the hall. My heart leapt. I called out, "Hello?" My voice trembled. The giggle stopped immediately. My ears strained, searching. Silence again. The hallway felt longer, darker, as if the house had grown overnight. I noticed something on the wall. A small handprint, smudged in dust. Fresh. Not mine. I crouched to inspect it, running a gloved finger along the edge. Warm, still slightly sticky. My stomach churned. I stepped back, scanning the shadows. Nothing moved, but the feeling of being watched pressed down on me, heavy and real. I forced myself to move on, toward the room at the end. The door was closed, simple, unassuming, but my gut told me this was where the house wanted me to go. I reached for the knob, cold metal under my palm, icy against my skin. I hesitated, listening. Nothing. The house held its breath. I opened the door slowly. The room was small, sparsely furnished, but the bed had been slept in recently. Sheets wrinkled, pillows pressed down, as if someone had been there minutes ago. On the nightstand, a photo frame faced the wall. I turned it. Another picture of Mrs. Dalton, older this time, staring directly at me. Her eyes seemed heavier, darker, full of warning. A sudden draft moved past me, ruffling the sheets. I spun around. The door was still open, the hallway empty, shadows shifting. But for a moment, I thought I saw a movement in the corner. A figure crouched, watching. Then it was gone. I backed toward the hallway. Something shifted behind me again, soft footsteps echoing, not running, not fleeing, just deliberate, following, patient. My flashlight wavered in my grip. My mind screamed to leave, to run. But curiosity, obligation, something inside me pushed forward. I moved to the next room, small study. Papers scattered on the floor, books slightly out of place, chairs angled oddly. One book lay open on the desk, a ledger faded, with writing in neat, careful script. I leaned closer, heart hammering. The entries were dates, names, simple notes, but the last one incomplete. It ended mid-word. My finger traced the final letters. Something about it made my skin crawl. The room grew colder suddenly, my breath misty in the air. The soft scuffing continued behind me, closer, almost beside me now. I spun, shining the light toward the sound. Nothing, yet I could feel it, watching me, waiting for a mistake. Another knock, from somewhere behind the study, deeper in the house. The sound reverberated in my chest. Not at a door, not on a wall, just inside. I swallowed, mouth dry, hands trembling. My flashlight flickered. Shadows stretched unnaturally, bending around corners, around furniture, shifting like liquid. I realized then that the house was alive, not in a literal sense, but in the way it moved around me. Shadows, sounds, spaces rearranging just out of view. Every room held a memory, or something pretending to be one, and I was intruding. A soft creak to my left. I turned. The hallway was empty, but a door at the end had opened slightly, slowly, deliberately. Nothing inside, yet a sense of presence pressed against me, a patience I couldn't name, a quiet insistence. I stepped toward it, heart hammering, every instinct screaming to leave. And as I did, the floor beneath me groaned. A faint whisper passed my ear, just a breath, a syllable I couldn't place. I froze. The air itself seemed to tighten, the shadows thickening, and I realized the house wasn't just empty. It had been waiting for me, watching, learning. I had no idea what I would find behind that door. The flashlight flickered again, and I cursed under my breath. Now for the first time, I wished I had brought backup, but even the thought felt hollow in this house. Every corner seemed alive now, every shadow stretching, bending, breathing just out corner of my eye. I wanted to look away, to run, but some dark thread held me in place. I moved deeper into the hallway, the floorboards groaning beneath each step. The storm outside had eased slightly, leaving only the patter of distant rain, muted, almost polite. Inside, though, the house had taken on a rhythm of its own, a slow, deliberate pulse that matched my heartbeat. The first flicker came from the lamp on the desk in the study. One moment it glowed warmly, casting long, safe shadows. The next, it was gone, plunging the room into darkness. I froze, heart hammering. My flashlight trembled in my grip. I could feel eyes on me, though every corner appeared empty. A movement to my left. Just a shadow, no form I could name, but it shifted in a way that made my skin crawl. I spun, shining the light toward it. Nothing. The hallway stretched endlessly, or maybe it had changed. I wasn't sure anymore. Each step forward felt heavier, like the house itself was weighing me down. The bedroom at the end of the hall loomed, pale light spilling from under the door. I approached slowly, every nerve screaming. The air grew colder, my breath misting faintly as I drew near. The door wasn't locked. I pushed it open just enough to peer inside. The room was empty, the bed neatly made. Curtains still fluttered as if a breeze had passed through. But the shadows here, they moved differently. Not randomly, not like the flicker of my flashlight. They lingered, leaned, stretched toward me, then recoiled, curling back into the corners. I felt nauseous, dizzy, the room tilting slightly in ways that couldn't exist. A chair swayed gently in the corner. I hadn't touched it. My flashlight flickered again, and for a fraction of a second, I thought I saw a figure sitting there, leaning forward, waiting. Then, just as quickly, the shadow collapsed into nothing, leaving the chair still and empty. I swallowed hard, tried to calm my racing thoughts. It's just shadows, I muttered to myself. Just tricks, eyes adjusting, nothing else. But even as I said it, the hair on my arm stood on end. There was something here, something that didn't want to be seen, but wanted to watch. The hallway behind me groaned. Floorboards, soft scuffs, deliberate steps that didn't match mine. I spun around, empty. My flashlight trembled, flickering violently, throwing the hallway into chaotic shadows that danced across walls and ceiling. I stumbled back, gripping the doorframe, breath shallow, pulse thrumming like a drum. Then I heard it, a soft whisper, impossible place. Just a syllable, almost like a word beginning but never finishing. I froze, straining to hear. It came again, closer now, echoing faintly off the walls. My stomach knotted. The house wasn't just alive. It was speaking in its own language, waiting for me to understand. I moved cautiously toward the living room, trying to stay calm. The furniture had shifted slightly, a chair angled differently, a small rug that hadn't been there before. Shadows pulled unnaturally in the corners, stretching toward the ceiling, and I could swear one of them moved independently of the light. A creeping presence I couldn't name. A sudden flicker, flashlight, lamp, shadows, all at once. My vision blurred for a heartbeat, and then I saw it, a figure, just at the edge of my light, tall, thin, leaning forward in a way that made my stomach drop. I blinked. Gone. Just the shadows, still and waiting. I forced myself to keep moving. I had to check upstairs again. Each step on the stairs groaned beneath me, with almost complaining. Upstairs, the hallway stretched unnaturally long. Doors lined either side, each one closed, each one hiding something I didn't want to see. My flashlight flickered as I passed, and I caught another movement in the corner of my eye. Too quick, too precise. A shadow that didn't belong, darting behind a doorway. Gone when I looked directly. I stopped, listening. Footsteps? No, just silence. But the tension in the air felt alive, heavy, pressing against my chest. I tried to tell myself it was nothing, just imagination, but the unease in my gut said otherwise. This house had patterns, rules, and I was breaking them. Another flicker, and the hallway changed again. I swear it stretched longer, darker. Doors seemed farther apart. I moved toward the first bedroom on the left. Curtains fluttered despite no breeze. Shadows stretched and recoiled. And then, movement in the corner. I froze, breath catching. The shadow detached itself from the wall. Slow, deliberate, leaning toward me, then retreating. My pulse skyrocketed. I stepped forward. It mirrored me, leaning, retreating, always just out of reach. Panic clawed at my chest, but I forced myself to breathe. I couldn't leave yet, not without answers. I reached the bedroom. Empty, yet the feeling of being watched was suffocating. I swung my flashlight across the room, catching every corner. Then the figure, blurred, dark, human-shaped, stood in the corner. I blinked. Gone. Only the shadows remained, but the emptiness felt wrong, alive. I noticed a small dresser against the far wall, drawers slightly open. I stepped closer. Inside, folded clothing. Normal, yet one drawer held nothing but a small, cracked photograph of Mrs. Dalton, smiling strangely. Her eyes, too sharp, too alive. I held in my hand, and the shadows shifted suddenly, curling toward me like tendrils. Another flicker. The hallway outside was gone. Or maybe it had moved. The walls closed in slightly, the ceiling lower. My flashlight's beam danced over warped walls, stretching shadows. A whisper came again, near my ear this time. I spun. Empty. The figure appeared again, just a flicker at the edge of the light. This time, I swore I could see it fully, thin, elongated, faceless. It leaned forward, closer, watching. My stomach dropped. I stumbled back, tripping over the rug, heart hammering. I tried to focus, to steady myself. It's just a shadow, I whispered, but the voice inside me didn't agree. The shadow didn't move like a trick of light. It moved with intent, patience, and awareness. I could feel it thinking, waiting for me to make a mistake. A sudden calm. The flashlight stabilized for a heartbeat. The figure was gone. Only the shadows remained, still and oppressive. I felt relief wash over me briefly. Then the air shifted, heavier, colder. Something moved behind me. I dared not look. My instinct screamed to run, but my legs froze. The door at the end of the hallway, a door I hadn't noticed before, was slightly ajar. A faint light flickered from inside, warm yet unnatural. The shadows seemed to lean toward it, as if it was the center of the house's attention. My pulse raced. Whatever waited behind that door, it wasn't human. And yet, I stepped forward. The shadows flickered again. And I realized with a cold certainty that the house wasn't just following me. It was learning me. The door at the end of the hallway loomed, pale light spilling faintly beneath it, like a warning. Every instinct in my body screamed to stop, to turn back, to leave the house and never look over my shoulder again. But curiosity, duty, something darker than both, kept me moving forward. My flashlight trembled in my hand, casting unsteady shadows that flickered along the walls. The hallway seemed to stretch. I could feel it lengthening, bending around me in ways that made no sense. My boots squeaked against the warped wood, each step echoing unnaturally. I tried to ignore the shifting shadows, the sense that something was moving just out of sight. always following, but my nerves were fraying. Every creak, every whisper, every flutter of the curtains made my stomach tighten. I reached the door, cold metal knob under my fingers, ice against my palm, though the rest of the house remained uncomfortably warm. I hesitated, hand hovering. Something in the air told me not to open it. A soft scratching came from inside. Not loud, deliberate, but faint. Patient, waiting. I swallowed. The sound didn't seem human, yet it suggested intention. Something alive behind that door. I gripped the knob and turned. The door opened slowly, creaking on its hinges in a way that made my skin crawl. The room beyond was dark, thicker than the rest of the house. My flashlight barely penetrated it. Shadows pooled along the floor, curling upward as if breathing, and from somewhere deep inside, the scratching continued, louder now, as if whatever was inside was moving closer to the door. I stepped inside, boots squeaking on damp wood. The air felt heavier, thicker. My chest tightened. Something in the room shifted. I swung the flashlight, catching a blur near the far corner. Gone in a blink. The shadows here, they didn't just move with the light. They twisted, independent, aware, watching me, waiting. A low creak came from the ceiling above. I froze. Nothing above me should be moving, but the house didn't follow rules anymore. I felt eyes on me, not from a shadow, not from a person, but from the room itself. Every wall, every corner seemed to lean in slightly, focusing on me. I moved forward. Floorboards groaned under my weight. Another scratching sound, now behind me. My hand shot to the flashlight, swinging around. Nothing, empty shadows. But the sound persisted, echoing faintly insistent. I realized with a sinking feeling that it wasn't coming from one place. It was everywhere. The room itself scratched. The walls, the floor, the air. My pulse quickened. I tried to rationalize it. Rodents, water dripping, a tree branch scraping outside. But none of it made sense. This was deliberate, calculated. I was not alone. Something was here, waiting, patient, unseen. A flash of movement caught my eye again. The far corner, deeper in the darkness. I swung the flashlight. A shadow leaned forward, thin, distorted, stretching impossibly tall. Faceless, watching. I stumbled back, heart hammering. My breath caught. The scratching grew louder, closer, not on the walls now, but from beneath the floor. I could feel it vibrating through my boots, through my legs, up my spine. The air seemed to pulse with it. I wanted to scream. My throat tightened, but I forced myself to breathe, one step at a time. Then I noticed the basement door, half hidden in the shadows, small, unassuming, yet emanating a presence heavier than the rest of the room. The scratching was coming from there now, patient, deliberate, knowing I was listening, knowing I wanted to stop, knowing I wouldn't. I hesitated. The light flickered again, plunging the room into darkness for a heartbeat. When it returned, the basement door was slightly ajar. Not fully, just enough to let the darkness spill out like a living thing. Something inside me screamed. I shouldn't go down there. I should leave, run, abandon everything. But the officer in me, the one who couldn't leave a call unfinished, kept moving, slowly, carefully. Each step toward the basement door felt heavier, as if gravity had doubled, pressing me down, making every heartbeat louder than the last. I reached for the door, hand trembling. The scratching stopped abruptly. Silence. Too complete, too deliberate. My ears strained. The storm outside had faded entirely. The world felt removed, suspended. The house held its breath. I held mine. Then a faint whisper, low, almost human, from just beyond the door. You shouldn't be here. My heart stopped. Not a warning. Not a threat. Just observation. The voice was inside my head as much as in the room. I staggered back slightly, gripping the edge of the doorframe. Another flicker. The shadows shifted violently. The air seemed to pulse. And then I saw it. Movement in the darkness beyond the basement. Something slithered, thin, elongated, faceless, sliding along the wall like liquid. A presence, patient, waiting, studying me. I stepped back, breathing ragged, flashlight swinging. The basement seemed impossibly deep. The air smelled damp, earthy metallic. My boots pressed against the threshold, but I couldn't move. Something intangible held me there, heavy and pressing, making my stomach twist. A scratching sound from behind me, from above me, from everywhere at once. The shadows pulsed, writhing like living things. I couldn't tell floor from wall from ceiling. The room itself felt alive, watching, waiting. I realized then I had been followed all along. Not by a person, not by a shadow. By the house. By something inside it. Something patient, silent, deliberate. It had learned me, mirrored me, predicted me. And now it was waiting for me to make the next move. A flicker in the darkness revealed the basement steps, narrow, descending into black nothingness. Something moved at the bottom, just a silhouette, thin, tall, faceless, leaning toward me, patient, watching, silent. I wanted to turn, run, scream, but I couldn't. My legs moved on their own, stepping toward the door, toward the darkness, toward whatever waited below. And then the scratching stopped. Complete silence. I paused, hand on the railing, breath shallow. The house seemed to lean in, as if holding its breath with me. The shadow at the bottom of the steps did not move. It didn't need to. The darkness itself was enough. I took one final step toward the edge. The basement door loomed, silent, patient, waiting. I realized then that whatever was down there didn't want to scare me. It wanted me to understand something I couldn't yet name. Something primal. Something I might never leave knowing. I gripped the railing. The air pressed down harder, thick and heavy. The shadow leaned forward slightly, faceless, patient, waiting. And I stepped closer. The door to the basement was silent, but I could feel it breathing. And in that moment, I understood the house didn't need to move to terrify. Its silence was enough. I stepped forward again, and the house waited. The fog hit first, thick and suffocating, curling around my car like smoke. Headlights barely cut through it, just enough to make the road edges shimmer and blur. I gripped the wheel tighter. The call came over the radio. Missing trucker, last seen an hour ago, somewhere along this stretch. I squinted into the white haze. Nothing, just a road ahead, and the endless gray swallowing a whole. I followed the fading glow of my own headlights, trying to make sense of the darkness. Every curve of the road seemed the same. Every tree lining the asphalt leaning closer, bending in the fog. The radio crackled, just static, then a voice, faint, distorted, barely human. "Are you close?" I cursed, turning the volume down. Couldn't tell if it was a dispatcher or some trick of the interference. A pair of headlights appeared suddenly, far ahead, piercing through the fog. I slowed. The lights were big, truck-sized, but when I drew closer, they vanished. No turnoff, no side road, nothing. My stomach sank. My pulse quickened. I blinked and they were back. Further down the road, just enough to make my brain question if I was losing it. I reached for the radio. Unit 7. I'm on the stretch near mile 40. Static. The words broke apart, twisted, and then it was gone. Silence. Save for the engine humming beneath me and the soft drum of rain against the windshield. The fog swallowed everything beyond the headlights. I could barely see my own hood. I gripped the wheel harder. The road seemed to stretch longer than it should, bending and folding in ways impossible. I shook my head. Fog messes with perception. Eyes deceive you. That's what I told myself. Yet my stomach nodded every time the headlights blinked back into view. Closer, farther, closer. Each time, I felt something behind them. Something waiting, watching. I slowed to a crawl. The road shoulder was slick, mist rising from the asphalt like steam. I squinted. A shape moved along the fog line. Another truck? No. Too thin, too fleeting. I blinked and it was gone. My pulse thumped against my ribs. Another crackle in the radio. This time it wasn't words, just breathing. Low, wet, uneven. I spun the volume, straining. Then a whisper. My name. Faint. I froze, hands tight on the wheel. Who is this? Nothing. Static again. Only the fog and the road ahead. The headlights appeared once more. Closer this time, just a silhouette against the mist. I could see the shape of the cab, the trailer faintly glinting in the dim light. Relief? Maybe, but the closer I got, the more unreal it seemed. The tires reflected nothing on the wet road. No splashes, no shadow, just headlights floating in the fog, moving without cause. I slowed even more. My flashlight, patrol light mounted in the car, sliced through the fog, catching nothing. The truck? Empty. Gone. But the lights lingered. They blinked, then vanished, leaving only the whispering fog around me. My hands shook, knuckles white. I thought of the dispatcher's words. Trucker missing. No distress calls. Last seen alive an hour ago. No radio check-ins. No cell signal. Just gone. And now, these headlights playing with my mind, teasing me, leading me somewhere I didn't want to go. I pulled over briefly, fog curling around my tires, muffling the world. I reached for the radio again. Static, and then a voice distorted. Don't follow. My stomach sank. It wasn't the dispatcher. It couldn't be. My name wasn't spoken, but the tone, insistent, urgent, sank deep into my chest. I watched the road. The headlights reappeared. They were moving slowly, deliberately, weaving slightly. Following? Or leading? I couldn't tell. My pulse thumped in my ears. Every instinct screamed to stop, to turn, but I followed anyway. The mist thickened further. Shapes began to emerge along the roadside. Trees bent at impossible angles, roadside signs half hidden, leaning toward the road. I blinked. When my eyes adjusted, they were straight. Normal, but the feeling remained. Eyes on me, something watching, just beyond the fog. A curve ahead. The headlights blinked again. For a moment, I could see the cab, clearer than before, a silhouette like a man standing near the door. No motion, just still, watching me. I slowed, hand tight on the wheel. Then the fog swallowed him. No truck, no cab, just silence. Just mist curling across the asphalt. I breathed shallow, the engine humming louder in my ears. Was it the fog? My mind playing tricks? I told myself yes. But something about the timing, the way the lights moved, the brief flashes of figure, felt deliberate. Something guiding me, testing me. The radio hissed again. A single word this time, slow, deliberate. Turn. I didn't. My hands shook. The lights flickered one last time and disappeared. For a heartbeat, nothing. Then a sound, metal scraping asphalt. Tires skidding. A shadow passing in the mist beside me. Too fast to be a vehicle. Too solid to be fog. I slammed the brakes, heart hammering. The fog pressed close, thick and wet. My breath misted inside the car. I tried to peer through the windshield. Nothing. Only the lingering sense of being followed. And the headlights, somewhere behind me now, just at the edge of perception. I shifted forward slowly, trying to keep sight of the empty road. Each mile felt endless. Every turn repeated the same shapes. Fog, shadows, nothing. Yet I knew it was there, waiting, leading me, testing me. Then a curve in the road revealed a truck, or what I thought was a truck, parked on the shoulder. Headlights off, engine cold. No driver, no movement. My stomach churned. I parked behind it, radio silent. The fog hummed, pressing close, curling around the tires. I stepped out, boots wet, fog seeping into every seam of my jacket. The world was silent, except for distant traffic far behind. The cab sat still, impossible, like a prop in a play. I approached cautiously, heart hammering. The door was ajar. Cold air seeped out. No engine heat. No sign of life. I leaned closer. Something scuffed behind me. I spun. Nothing. Only fog and headlights. Far away, blinking in and out, teasing me. My pulse thudded. A shiver ran up my spine. The truck, was it empty? Or was it something else? Waiting. Watching. Playing a game I didn't understand. I reached for the door handle. Metal, cold, slick with condensation. I paused. Behind me, the fog shifted, darkened unnaturally. The headlights flickered closer. Or was it my imagination? Every instinct screamed to step back, to leave, to abandon the stretch of road entirely. But I opened the door anyway, and the world seemed to shift. The fog clung to everything now, thick and wet, curling around the tires like it had a will of its own. I kept the engine running but moved forward slowly, scanning the roadside. Puddles reflected dim headlights, each one a distorted mirror of the world. Water turned the ordinary into something uncanny. I caught a flicker, movement in a puddle that shouldn't have been there. A man, maybe the missing trucker, but the reflection twisted unnaturally, limbs too long, head tilting at an impossible angle. I blinked. Gone. Only the fog and the dull sheen of water remained. I shook my head, telling myself it was the headlights, my mind playing tricks, but the feeling lingered. The fog wasn't just mist. It was alive, watching, testing. Each puddle, each reflection seemed to have depth beyond the shallow water, a world within a world, teasing me, hinting at something I couldn't understand. Another car passed, headlights cutting through the gray, bouncing across wet asphalt. I noticed immediately. It didn't move like a normal vehicle. The reflection in the puddles warped, elongating, bending, sliding across the surface as if it had its own life. I turned, trying to follow it, but the car itself moved normally. The reflections didn't. My stomach sank. My pulse pounded in my ears. I gripped the wheel tighter, eyes darting side to side, watching. Every puddle now held a hint of movement, shadows stretching too long, a figure leaning forward. Sometimes it was me, sometimes something else, mirrored and wrong. My reflection caught in a rear-view puddle seemed delayed, lagging a fraction, eyes following, waiting. I passed a roadside ditch. The water shimmered unnaturally, and I swore I saw footprints in a reflection that didn't exist on the muddy bank. They vanished when I looked directly. I swallowed hard, pressing my forehead against the wheel for a moment, try and calm myself. But the road ahead never straightened. The fog thickened, pressing close, curling around the tires, muffling sound. A horn in the distance startled me, though I couldn't place its source. Another car approached, headlights dull, orange, unnatural. The puddles reflected something else entirely, shadows moving independently of the vehicles. A silhouette crouched in the fog along the roadside. No motion, just watching. I blinked. Empty. Nothing. Only my pulse racing in the fog, swirling like smoke. The radio crackled softly, just static this time. I hadn't even turned it on. A whisper, not a word, just a low, drawn-out hum. I froze, hands tight on the wheel, breath shallow. My eyes scanned the fog. Shapes flickered along the edges, black against gray. Couldn't tell what was solid, what was reflection, what was fog. The world had dissolved into uncertainty. I slowed to a crawl. My headlights barely cut through the mist. I could see the outline of the missing truck now, half hidden in gray, parked strangely, tilted as if leaning into the fog. No engine sound, no heat, door slightly ajar. The reflection in the puddles along the shoulder showed a man inside or someone, but every time I blinked, the image warped, twisting, stretching, almost grinning at me. I stepped out, boots squelching in wet dirt. Fog swallowed my legs up to my knees. I reached the cab slowly, hand on the door. Nothing, just cold metal slick with condensation. I leaned closer to the reflection in the nearest puddle. My face stared back at me, but not quite mine, eyes darker, a smile that wasn't real. I stumbled back, heart hammering, breath shallow. The fog thickened further. Shapes moved along the roadside, just at the edge of my vision, a shadow leaning forward, then recoiling, another figure flickering behind a tree. I turned quickly, empty, only the puddles reflected them. Every reflection a hint of something watching, guiding me. I felt the road itself bending, warping, folding unnaturally beneath me. I returned to the car, heart racing. The fog outside seemed heavier now, pressing, curling around the tires. As I climbed inside, I noticed the dashboard reflected in the windshield strangely. The hands on the wheel weren't mine. I blinked. Normal. My pulse surged. The fog outside whispered against the metal of the car, soft, insistent. Another vehicle passed in the opposite direction. Its headlights flickered, disappearing into the mist. But the reflection lingered in the puddles, sliding along the asphalt, bending around me. I tried to keep pace, turned the wheel slightly, but my tires didn't move with it. It existed in its own dimension, teasing, stretching, alive. I could feel it now. The fog wasn't just fog. It was aware, responsive, patient, waiting for me to make a mistake. I tried to convince myself I'd imagined it all. Reflections, trick of the light, fog playing games. But something in the air pressed against my chest, heavy and deliberate, reminding me I wasn't alone. Ahead, the road curved sharply. The fog thickened into an almost wall-like sheet. Headlights disappeared completely. I squinted. Nothing. Then a faint glow in a puddle. Something moving. Closer, darker, crouching. I reached instinctively for the radio. Static. Whisper. My name drawn out, distorted. Not human. Not entirely. My pulse spiked. Adrenaline crawling under my skin. I drove forward slowly, heart hammering, scanning every puddle, every shadow, every warped reflection. The world seemed wrong, impossibly wrong. The fog shifted subtly with every movement I made, almost guiding me, leading me somewhere I didn't want to go, somewhere I knew I couldn't leave. I caught the headlights again, floating in the mist. The missing truck, maybe, or maybe something else wearing its shape. Door ajar, empty cab, but the reflections in the puddles showed more. Figures moving in the fog behind it, crouching, waiting, watching me as much as I watched them. I blinked, empty, only the faint drip of water and the fog curling around the tires. I stepped out again, boots wet, fog rising around my legs. Every puddle now held shadows. I could see myself, yes, but not quite me, stretched, twisted, leaning forward, waiting. I could feel its eyes in mine, the reflection's eyes, darker, knowing, whispering secrets I couldn't understand. And the fog shifted, folding the road behind me. A silhouette appeared at the edge of the mist, too thin, elongated, faceless. I stumbled back, heart hammering, breath shallow. It didn't move, just leaned forward, patient, waiting. The puddles reflected it perfectly, every angle, every bend impossible. I realized the road itself had become a trap. The fog, the reflections, the shadows, they were alive. They weren't trying to scare me. They were testing me, leading me somewhere I couldn't escape. My pulse surged. Every instinct screamed to run. But the missing truck, the distorted reflections, the whispering fog, had me rooted. And I understood with a cold certainty that the world I saw in the puddles wasn't just reflection. It was real. Somewhere in the mist, something waited, patient, deliberate, impossible. And it knew I had noticed. I climbed back into the car, hands trembling on the wheel. Headlights flickered weakly against the fog, reflecting a world that was no longer mine. The shadows and the puddles followed me, stretching, waiting, folding the road, bending reality itself. And the whisper came again, soft, drawn out, impossible. You're close. The fog didn't lift. It pressed against the car, thick and wet, seeping into every crevice, curling around the tires, hiding everything beyond the headlights. I kept driving slowly, eyes darting to every puddle, every shifting shadow along the roadside. My pulse was a steady hammer in my ears, each beat echoing against the metal frame of the car. Then the radio crackled. I hadn't touched it. Static, low and whining. I reached for the volume, dialed up, and the static sharpened, buzzing like broken glass in my skull. And then I heard it. My name. Faint, almost drowned in the interference, but unmistakable. Officer Parker. I froze, hands gripping the wheel, knuckles white. I looked around, fog pressing close. Empty road, nothing but gray stretching ahead. I tried to shake it off. Ghostly interference. Static, a trick of nerves. But the whisper came again, closer, clearer. Parker, don't look back. I swallowed hard. My mouth was dry, tongue stuck to the roof. My pulse rattled. I tried to speak into the radio, but nothing came out. Only static. Only the soft whispering, repeating, drawn out, impossible. I turned the dial, tried to cut the channel, but the voice followed, crackling, twisting, bending. It was inside the car now, inside my head, A whisper threaded through the metal and fog. A low pulse throbbed through the speakers. Not just sound, a vibration that rattled the bones in my chest. I realized it matched my heartbeat. Slow, deliberate, mimicking me, and then the whisper shifted. My name again, but different this time. Elongated, stretching, almost grinning at me. Perkercare. I blinked, shivering. The fog outside seemed heavier, darker, folding in on the headlights. Shadows elongated along the roadside. Shapes crouched just at the edge of vision, flickering, twisting. Every time I glanced at the mirrors, I thought I saw figures leaning in, waiting. The radio whispered again, words I couldn't understand fully. Something about following, something about the truck, something about me. I reached to turn it off completely. Static persisted. The whispers didn't stop. They threaded through the engine hum, through the tires on wet asphalt, wrapping around me, impossible to ignore. I swallowed, hand shaking on the wheel. Every instinct screamed to stop, to leave, to abandon the stretch of road entirely. But the missing truck was out there, somewhere. I could feel it, even if the fog hit it. A flash in the fog. Headlights. Not mine. Not the truck, as far as I could tell. Something else. Flickering at the edge of my vision. A silhouette leaning forward, watching. I blinked. Gone. Only the radio humming, whispering my name, insistent, patient. My pulse raced. I tried to focus, rationalize. Fog playing tricks, static interference, nerves fraying. But it didn't make sense. The radio wasn't just whispering my name. It was responding to me, to my fear, to my thoughts. Every time I hesitated, every time I slowed, the whispers intensified, coaxing, guiding, teaching me something I couldn't yet understand. I gripped the wheel tighter, scanning the fog. Headlights flickered far ahead. The missing truck? Maybe, but something about the way the fog parted around it, dark shapes moving just beyond, made my stomach twist. I realized then that the fog, the radio, the reflections, they were connected, all part of the same game. Testing me, leading me, watching me. A whisper again, closer. Inside my ear this time. You're not alone. I spun, looking into the fog. Empty. The roadside trees bent strangely. Shadows stretching at impossible angles. Shapes moved behind them. Flickering. Waiting. My pulse hammered. Breath shallow. The car seemed smaller, trapped inside a cocoon of mist and sound. I thought I saw a figure in the rearview mirror. Pale, faceless, crouched, following me. Blinked. Gone. Only the radio static remained, buzzing, whispering. My name again, drawn out, deliberate, distorted. Perkerker. I realized with a cold certainty that the fog outside, the reflections in the puddles, the radio whispers, they weren't separate. They were all part of something that existed in layers, overlapping, observing. It knew my name, my presence, my fear, and it was patient, waiting. The truck headlights appeared again, closer now, through the fog. Engine off, door ajar, empty, but the radio hissed, whispering, coaxing me forward. The voice changed, now almost a chant. Parker, follow, follow. My pulse surged. Every nerve screamed to stop. My hands trembled, but I knew I would move. Compelled, guided. I pressed forward slowly. Headlights slicing through fog. Radio whispering, twisting reality. Shapes crouched in the fog along the roadside. Fleeting, impossible. Reflections in puddles elongated, stretched, crouched, grinning. I glanced at one and caught something. A hand reaching toward me. I jerked away. Empty. Nothing. Only the whispering, insistence, patient, alive. I reached the abandoned truck. Headlights faintly reflected in the puddles. Door ajar. Engine cold. No driver. And the radio hummed inside the car, whispering, almost coaxing. I stepped out cautiously, boots sinking slightly in wet mud. Fog pressed around my legs. Every puddle reflected figures I couldn't quite see. Shapes crouching, moving, leaning, watching. I reached the cab, hand trembling, metal cold and slick. The fog outside shifted subtly, folding in on itself. Another whisper directly in my ear, Inside, you'll see. My stomach dropped. Inside what? The truck? The fog? The road itself? I climbed back into the car, trying to steady my hands. The radio continued. Not words now, just low hum, vibrating through my chest, inside my skull. Shadows flickered along the road. The missing truck remained still, waiting. Puddles reflected impossible figures leaning closer. My pulse thumped, breath shallow. Fear prickled at the base of my skull. The whispers changed tone. Not just my name. Commands, warnings, observations. Every movement I made, every hesitation, they followed, responded, patient, deliberate. I could feel them in the air, in the metal, in the fog itself. Not human, not entirely. Something else, watching, waiting, learning. I realized then the radio wasn't broken. It wasn't malfunctioning. It was alive, or channeling something alive. Every whisper threaded through fog, the reflections, the road, guiding me toward the truth I couldn't yet see, toward something beyond comprehension, toward the truck, toward whatever waited. I gripped the wheel, headlights cutting weakly through the fog, the truck ahead silent, empty, door ajar, and the radio hummed, whispered, patient, waiting. My name again, drawn out, deliberate. Parker. I realized then I had no choice. The fog, the radio, the road, they all led me forward, to see, to understand, to confront what was waiting. And the whispers would not let me stop. The fog had thickened to something almost solid, pressing against the tires, curling around the headlights, swallowing the road behind me. Every turn, every puddle, every shadow felt deliberate, as if the world itself was holding its breath, waiting for me to make a move. I kept driving, slow, deliberate, trying to keep my nerves from unraveling. But the headlights of the abandoned truck loomed closer now, impossibly still in the fog. Its door ajar like an invitation I didn't want to accept. I slowed, pulling onto the shoulder. Mud squelched beneath my tires. The truck sat there, silent, waiting, engine cold, no movement inside. And yet, I knew it wasn't just empty. Something lingered in the fog, watching, waiting. Every instinct screamed at me to leave, but curiosity gnawed harder. I had to know. I had to see. I stepped out, boots sinking into the wet shoulder, fog curling around my legs. My flashlight cut through the mist, revealing nothing at first, only the asphalt glistening with rainwater, only the truck, half hidden in gray. But then I noticed the footprints, small, deliberate, leading away from the cab into the fog. Fresh. Human? Maybe, but they didn't match the size of the missing trucker. Too small, too deliberate. They stopped abruptly, like whoever, or whatever, was walking at vanish mid-step. A shiver ran down my spine. I followed them, flashlight trembling in my hand. The fog shifted around me, curling, pressing closer, heavy and deliberate. Shapes flickered at the edge of my vision. Leaning, crouching, waiting, but whenever I turned to look directly, they were gone. Only footprints, puddles, and fog remained. I paused, breathing shallow. Something moved in the fog, a shadow stretching along the shoulder. Not the truck, not the trees. Something long, thin, crouched low. I froze. It didn't move like a human. Too smooth, too deliberate, too fluid. My pulse hammered in my ears. Heart racing. I raised a flashlight. The beam caught nothing. Only fog. Only wet asphalt. And yet, the feeling remained. It was watching, waiting. The radio hissed in my hand. Static first, low, almost comforting in the familiar way. Then a whisper. Not my name this time, not a command. Just a soft, patient drawl. Closer, closer, my pulse surged. I could hear it in the air, not just through the radio. A presence curling around me. Shapes flickered at the edge of the light. Leaning, crouching, moving impossibly fast. I kept walking, boots squelching. The footprints reappeared, leading toward a curve in the road where the fog thickened even more. I paused, scanning the mist with a flashlight, and then I saw it, a shadow stretching along the edge of the fog. It moved with a grace that was unnatural, gliding along the shoulder just at the boundary of visibility. Its form shifted, bending, almost humanoid but wrong in every way. I swallowed hard. Adrenaline spiked. Every instinct screamed to run. And yet, I stepped forward. Something compelled me, pulled me. The fog seemed to part slightly, guiding me toward the shadow, toward the missing truck, toward whatever waited just beyond sight. Footsteps echoed behind me. Not mine, not human. Slow, deliberate, brushing against the gravel. I spun, empty. The fog curled around the shoulder like a living thing, shifting, folding. Shadows flickered, crouched, stretched. My flashlight trembled in my hand. The truck sat silently behind me, engine cold, door ajar. And yet, I felt its presence pressing, guiding. The shadow moved again, gliding toward the puddles. I noticed something then, the reflections. Every puddle along the shoulder now held a figure, crouching, leaning forward, faceless. One hand raised, pointing toward me, almost beckoning. I blinked. It vanished when I looked directly. Only the fog and the shoulder remained. I felt a cold breeze, unnatural in the still. Wet night. The radio hissed again, whispering softly. "You're close, almost." My pulse thumped violently. Breath shallow. I stepped forward again, boots sinking into mud, flashlight cutting weakly through the fog. Every instinct screamed at me to stop, to turn, to run. But I couldn't. Something was ahead. Something waiting. The footprints ended abruptly at a low mound of fog. I leaned forward, squinting. A shape emerged. A figure crouched, faceless, leaning forward just at the edge of the flashlight beam. I froze, heart hammering, pulse surging. Its presence radiated patience, calculation, deliberate attention. I wanted to run. I wanted to scream. My legs moved slowly, almost involuntarily, toward it. And then I saw the truck's cab reflected in the puddle at my feet. Not the cab as it was, but inside, a figure sat upright, head tilting, limbs twisting unnaturally, eyes dark, fixed, staring at me through reflection. I stumbled back, heart hammering. The puddle rippled. The figure vanished. But the feeling remained, eyes on me, waiting. I turned back to the shadow. It had shifted, closer, fluid, stretching, impossible angles. I blinked. Gone. Only fog curling along the shoulder. Only the radio whispering, almost patient now, coaxing, "Come closer." I backed away toward the truck. Boots sinking, mud slippery. The cab door creaked slightly. I froze. The air was heavy, wet, oppressive. I could feel the presence circling, pressing, impossible. Shadows flickered at the edge of the fog, crouching, bending, leaning. My flashlight wavered. I could barely see the door. A sudden noise, a scraping, slow, deliberate, from the shoulder. Metal? Wood? Or something else? My pulse surged violently. I stepped forward cautiously. The shadow moved along the fog line again. Too fast. Too smooth. I couldn't track it. Couldn't predict it. Only felt its presence. Pressing, patient, alive. I leaned toward the cab, hand on the cold metal. The fog shifted around me like water. Shapes crouched in the puddles, impossibly thin, elongated, leaning forward. One figure mirrored my movements perfectly. My pulse thundered in my ears. Breath shallow. I could feel it now. Not just watching, not just testing, but aware, reacting to me. Then the truck door moved slightly. A whisper to the radio. "Inside, see." I swallowed hard. My stomach churned. My instinct screamed to run, to abandon the shoulder, the fog, the night. But something held me, compelled me. The shadow along the fog line, the whispers, the reflections in the puddles, all guiding, all patient, waiting. I took a deep breath and opened the cab door fully. The fog pressed close, curling inside the vehicle. Darkness, cold metal, empty, and yet I knew it wasn't empty. Something lingered, just beyond sight, just beyond comprehension. Shadows crouched in the puddles outside, reflections stretching, waiting, coaxing. I stepped inside the cab. Air heavy, damp, unnatural. Radio hummed softly, whispering again. Almost, my heart thumped violently. Breath shallow. The fog outside shifted, curling around the cab like it had a will, pressing, observing. Shadows flickered at the edges of my vision. Figures crouched in puddles, stretched impossibly. I realized with a chill that I had crossed a threshold. I wasn't just on the shoulder anymore. I was inside a space that obeyed its own rules. A space where fog, reflection, sound, and shadow converged. Patient, deliberate, alive, and whatever had been guiding me, watching me, it knew I had arrived. The whispers intensified, threading to the fog, the puddles, the radio, pressing into my skull. Shapes moved in the reflections, crouching, leaning forward, stretching impossibly. And then a single word, soft, drawn out. Look. I leaned forward, pulse hammering, breath shallow, and the world seemed to tilt, fold, curl around me. The shoulder, the fog, the truck, the reflections, they were alive, watching, waiting, patient. I realized in the truth, and a cold certainty ran through me. Nothing on this road was as it seemed. The fog, the shadows, the whispers, they had led me here for a reason, and I had no choice but to see what waited at the end. The call came just as I was finishing my patrol, low on fuel and patience. The voice on the other end was fractured, delayed, warped, like it had traveled through some underwater tunnel before reaching my radio. Officer, I need help, it stuttered. Pauses stretched between syllables, long, distorted. My stomach nodded immediately. Not an ordinary stranded driver. Something about the way the words bent, the silence between them, it wasn't natural. I started the patrol car, headlights cutting into the black void ahead. The road was slick with rain, the asphalt shiny, reflecting nothing but darkness. Fog was rolling in, slow and heavy, curling around the edges of the tires, swallowing the lines on the road. Every mile felt longer than the last, and the voice crackled again. Don't come alone. I checked the GPS. The location didn't make sense. An old service road, overgrown, barely used. The kind of place you shouldn't be at night. But I was trained to respond. Trained to drive into the unknown. My hands gripped the wheel tighter. Rain tapped against a windshield. A staccato drum that made the static in my ears worse. Every shadow along the roadside seemed wrong. Trees bent at odd angles. Branches curling like fingers. Reflections in the puddles of rain stretched and shimmered unnaturally. I blinked. The voice came again, distorted, layered with static, almost whispering directly into my skull. Hurry before... I couldn't make out the last word, and that uncertainty dug into my chest. Headlights of a patrol car cut through the fog in weak beams, illuminating slick patches of asphalt. I slowed instinctively, heart hammering. The silence between the voices' words stretched unbearably. Every time the static paused, I expected movement outside the car, a figure emerging from the fog, but there was nothing, only shadows that didn't quite belong, bending at impossible angles, like the fog itself was breathing. I remembered the call dispatcher's voice earlier, clipped, professional. Vehicle stranded, area rarely traveled. Officer, proceed with caution. Caution. That word rang in my head as the warped voice crackled again. I am here. I froze. Goosebumps prickled along my arms. The road behind me was swallowed by darkness, and ahead, the fog thickened, pressing in. The call had come from a dead-end stretch, surrounded by woods on either side. I considered turning back. For a moment, I actually thought about it. But the voice, human, desperate, wrong in tone, pulled me forward. The fog shifted, curling around the headlights. I thought I saw shapes crouching just beyond vision, twisting, stretching. My pulse quickened. Every instinct screamed danger. Yet the voice continued, slower now, deliberate, almost coaxing. Don't stop, don't look. I blinked, squinting into the mist. Something shimmered in the road ahead. A faint reflection? A car? Or something else entirely? The static on the radio warped again. A low hum threaded to the warped words. Behind me, I glanced in the rearview mirror. Nothing. Just fog, but the sense of being followed, of something watching, settled in my chest like lead. My hands tightened on the wheel. The road curved sharply. Rainwater sloshed against the tires. And then, for a heartbeat, the headlights caught a figure, motionless, standing at the edge of the fog. Too tall, too thin, bending slightly, watching me. Gone before I blinked. I swallowed hard. The voice stuttered through the radio again, layered now with multiple tones, multiple voices, overlapping. I can't move, too late. The words blurred. I shook my head, trying to clear it. Fog pressed against the car. Thick, heavy, almost solid. I realized I couldn't see the end of the road. It was all gray, shapeless, alive. Every mile felt like a slow crawl through water. I scanned the roadside constantly. Puddles reflected movement that wasn't mine. Shapes crouched, leaning forward, just beyond the beam of the headlights. I blinked. Nothing. Just fog. And static whispering, pulling me closer, testing me. I passed a small clearing. A shadow moved across it. Quick, crouched, too fluid to be human. My pulse spiked, breath shallow. The voice warped again, almost urgent now. Don't stop, it sees. I pressed the accelerator slightly, tires skimming wet asphalt. Headlights cut weakly through the fog. Every instinct screamed to turn back, to abandon the call, to drive home. But I couldn't. Some force, call it duty, fear, curiosity, or something else, pushed me forward. Then the call went silent. Static hummed. The only sound was rain against the windshield, my pulse, and the soft drum of the engine. I swallowed, feeling exposed, alone, vulnerable. And then a single word drawn out, deliberate, chilling. Harker. My blood ran cold. It wasn't just a voice. It was recognition, awareness. Something beyond human, patient, calculating. Something in the fog, in the radio, in the night itself knew me. And I knew then the night was no longer ordinary. The road ahead seemed endless, shapeless. Fog thickened, curling, pressing in. Shapes crouched, shadows bent. Reflections shimmered in puddles that weren't puddles at all. The car moved forward, slow, deliberate. Static hummed, whispering, coaxing. And I realized this road, this call, this fog, it wasn't just an accident. It was a trap, and I was driving straight into it. I gripped the wheel, knuckles white, trying to focus. Every instinct screamed, but the warped voice whispered again, slow, deliberate, patient. Almost there. I had no idea where there was, and that was the worst part. I found the car just off the side of the road, headlights still dimly glowing, doors slightly ajar, engine humming faintly. My pulse spiked the moment I saw it. Alone in the fog, it looked abandoned, but something about it pressed against my chest, heavy and wrong. The rain had slowed to a drizzle, but the fog wrapped everything like a damp blanket, curling through the trees, curling around the car, curling around me. I stepped out of my patrol car, boots squelching against the wet gravel. The smell hit me first, wet leather, decay, something coppery that made my stomach lurch. I swallowed hard, gripping my flashlight. I should have called it in. I should have stayed in my car. But the instinct to see, to check, was stronger. I walked toward the driver's side. Doors creaked when I nudged them with my hand. No one inside. Empty. Just the faint hum of the engine, the smell, and a faint residue of something. Maybe spilled coffee, maybe blood. I couldn't tell. Everything looked normal, except the air was heavy, like it had weight, like the car itself was holding its breath. I circled the car. Back doors open. Interior wet with condensation. Fog curling in through the windows. A wet spot on the driver's seat caught my attention. Something had been sitting there. Recently, the shape of it pressed into the fabric, cold and damp. Goosebumps prickled along my arms. I leaned closer, heart hammering. Footsteps. Soft. Behind me, I spun. Nothing. Just fog. Curling along the gravel and the trees. My flashlight beam cut through the gray, illuminating nothing. I swallowed, trying to steady my nerves. Maybe it was just my imagination, but the smell, the decay was real, and that kept me rooted, uneasy. I opened the glove compartment. Nothing but papers, a few overseats, and a driver's log. No sign of the man. The steering wheel was wet from someone's hands. Too cold to be just rain. I ran my fingers over it, shivering. Something had been here, sitting, waiting, watching. I leaned inside, scanning every corner. The back seat was empty, except for a single coat draped over the seat. Dark, heavy, wet. I reached out, and touched it. Cold, not just cold from the night air. Cold as if it carried something else. My breath fogged in the light. Static hissed faintly in my radio. I froze. Nothing had changed. The car was still, empty, and yet I felt it. The weight, the presence. The fog outside shifted, curling around the vehicle. Reflections shimmered on the wet dashboard, bending my flashlight's beam. I caught a glimpse of movement in the rear view mirror. Something crouched just beyond the tree lean. Impossible angles, long limbs leaning, crouching. I blinked. Gone. Only fog. Only the weight of silence pressing in. I checked the back seat again. Empty, but the wet spot on the driver's seat had spread, darkening, as if something had just lifted itself away. The smell intensified, metallic, wet decay. I gagged, stepping back. Rainwater dripped from the roof, pattering against the asphalt, blending with the hum of the idling engine. My radio crackled. A faint whisper, overlapping static. Words too soft to fully understand. I froze. Listened. Close, closer. The voice, or whatever it was, seemed layered, almost patient. Waiting. Testing. And I knew it was watching me from outside the car. Or maybe from inside. I couldn't tell. I circled to the passenger side. Footsteps sloshed in the wet gravel behind me again. I spun. Nothing. Only fog. Only silence. The code in the back seat shifted slightly, as if caught by some unseen hand. My pulse raced. I gripped the flashlight tighter, scanning. Shapes crouched just at the edge of the light, bending, leaning forward. I blinked. Gone. Only fog. Only wet asphalt and the hum of the idling engine. The driver's seat. I had to see. Something compelled me. Slowly I reached in. Nothing, but the sensation of weight lingered, a pressure that pressed against my chest. A heartbeat? My own? No. Something else. Something patient, deliberate, waiting. I leaned closer to the radio. Static. Whispering. Almost impatient now. Look, now. The voice or voices layered, overlapping. I swallowed hard. The fog outside seemed to ripple, curling closer around the car, pressing against the metal. Shapes crouched at the tree lean, bending, stretching. Shadows that weren't shadows. Watching, waiting. The smell intensified, thick, metallic, like something had just been inside. I gagged again, stepping back. My flashlight caught something then. Small scratches along the interior panel of the door. Fresh, deliberate, marks that suggested someone, or something, had been inside while I was approaching. And yet, no footprints. Nothing outside that could explain it. I checked the rear view mirror again. Shapes crouched in puddles beyond the tree lean. Reflections bending, stretching. One mirrored my movement. Crouched low, leaning forward. I froze. Every instinct screamed danger. Every rational thought told me to leave. And yet, I couldn't. Something anchored me here. Something patient, deliberate, alive. I leaned inside the cab one last time. The coat was gone. Nothing in the back seat. The wet spot on the driver's seat still darkened. And then I noticed it. Scratches along the dashboard. Not just marks, but letters. Faint, carved, almost imperceptible. Watch. I gagged, stumbling backward, flashlight shaking. The fog outside pressed closer. Shapes crouched, bent, stretched impossibly. Footsteps echoed faintly, brushing against gravel. I spun. Nothing. Only fog. Only the idling car, humming, breathing almost, and the static whispering again. Closer. I stepped back into the patrol car, shaking, heart hammering, breath shallow. I locked the doors, radio crackling. The fog pressed against the windshield, curling, alive, almost solid. I drove slowly, eyes darting, trying to keep sight of the vehicle behind me. But every time I glanced back, it felt wrong. Closer, different, watching. The road stretched on, endless. Fog curling around trees, around puddles, around reflections. The idling car behind me seemed to move of its own accord, following. Static hummed in the radio. Whispers. Patient. Waiting. I realized then that the vehicle wasn't empty. Not really. Something lingered watching, testing, guiding, patient, and I was still on its terms, still part of whatever game this fog, this night, this road had designed. I parked a short distance from the car, keeping the engine running, radio humming faintly. The fog had thickened even more, curling through the trees and across the asphalt, hiding everything beyond 10 feet. My flashlight cut weakly into the gray, and then I saw them, footprints, wet, deliberate, leading away from the idling car, deep in the soft shoulder mud. They weren't human, not quite, too small, too precise, each step perfectly placed. My pulse spiked. I crouched, shining the beam closer. They ended abruptly, just stopped, as if whoever or whatever made them had vanished into the air. I felt the weight of unseen eyes pressing from the tree line. The fog shifted like it had a mind of its own. I followed the prints cautiously. Mud squelched beneath my boots. The fog wrapped around me, curling, bending, thickening. Shapes crouched just beyond vision, bending impossibly. Reflections shimmered in puddles. But when I looked directly, nothing was there, nothing but fog. And yet, I felt it, watching, testing, patient. The wind whispered through the trees, low and deliberate. Static hummed faintly in the radio, overlapping with the rustle of leaves. Don't turn back, the words warped, layered, almost patient. I swallowed hard. Footsteps echoed behind me, soft, deliberate, brushing against gravel. I spun, empty, just fog, just silence. My pulse thundered. The footprints led to a small clearing. Wet leaves slick underfoot. The fog curled tighter here, pressing in. I shone the flashlight across the ground. Nothing, no sign of who or what made the tracks. And then I realized the air was thick, heavy, cold. Breathing it felt like inhaling water. Shapes crouched just at the edge of the light, bending, stretching impossible angles. I blinked. Gone. Only fog. Only silence. I glanced back at the car. Headlights dim. Fog curling through the open doors. I could almost swear I saw movement inside the vehicle. Shadows stretching, bending. I shook my head. Focus. The footprints ended at the edge of the clearing. No trail continued. Yet I knew the presence hadn't left. A sound, soft, deliberate, scraping against gravel. My pulse spiked. I spun. Empty. The fog moved, curling, almost alive. Shapes crouched at the tree line, bending impossibly, reflections in puddles stretching, leaning forward. I felt a gaze, patient, calculated. Close. Too close. Closer than I wanted. I swallowed hard. The radio hummed. Static low, voice layered. Closer, can't escape. My stomach churned. Panic pressed against my ribs, heavy and cold. Every instinct screamed to run, but I couldn't. Something anchored me here. Something patient, deliberate, alive. I stepped forward again, flashlight trembling. The fog pressed around me, shapes crouching at its edge. The footprints reappeared, faint, deliberate, leading to a curve in the road I hadn't noticed before. I blinked. The air thickened, breath shallow. Something moved along the fog line, long and fluid, bending, crouching. I couldn't track it, couldn't predict it, only feel it, watching, testing. The puddles reflected movement. Shadows crouched, leaning, stretching impossibly. One mirrored my steps perfectly. I froze. My pulse surged, breath shallow. The fog seemed to pulse with life, pressing against me, curling around boots and flashlight. Static hummed the radio again. Whispers layered, patient, almost coaxing. Follow, follow. I forced myself forward. Footprints ended at a low mound of fog. I leaned closer, straining. And then I saw it. A figure crouched, impossible angles, faceless, leaning forward just at the edge of the light. My pulse spiked, heart hammering. The weight of presence pressed against my chest. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't move. And yet, I couldn't look away. The puddles reflected it, crouched, stretching, mirroring my movements. I realized with a chill, it wasn't just watching. It was aware, reacting, learning, patient, calculating. My instinct screamed to retreat, to abandon the footprints, the fog, the night. But something deeper, harder to find, pushed me forward. The static intensified, almost impatient. Almost closer. Shapes flickered at the tree line, bending impossibly, crouching, stretching. The footprints vanished. No trace left in the mud. Nothing to follow. And yet, I knew the path was still there. The presence had guided me. Watching, testing, waiting. A low whisper, soft, deliberate, chilling. Don't stop. My breath caught. The fog thickened. The trees pressed closer. Shadows crouched just beyond sight, bending, leaning, stretching. Reflections in puddles shimmered, flickering, bending unnaturally. One crouched figure mirrored me perfectly. I shivered. I glanced back at the car. Headlights dim, engine humming faintly, doors slightly ajar. Empty, but I knew it wasn't. The presence lingered. Inside, outside, in the fog, in the reflections. Patient, watching, waiting. I took a cautious step forward. Footprints appeared again, beside the car, leading away. Same size, same precision. They vanished again into the fog. And I realized I wasn't following them. They were following me. Patient, deliberate, testing, waiting. Heart hammering, breath shallow. I felt it. Something crouched just beyond the edge of the flashlight beam. Watching, patient, almost coaxing. The fog curled closer. Shapes crouched, bent, stretched impossibly. Reflections in puddles mirrored movement I hadn't made. Static whispered again. Closer, closer. I forced myself to move toward the vanishing footprints. Boots squelching, flashlight trembling. The fog pressed tighter. The shapes at the edge bent, crouched, mirrored. My pulse raced. Breath shallow. I realized with cold certainty. The footprints weren't just marks in mud. They were a lure, a guide, something alive, patient, waiting for me to step into the next stage. And in that moment, I understood the truth. I was not alone, not on the road, not near the car, not anywhere. And the footprints, the vanishing footprints, were proof. Someone or something was always with me, always testing, always waiting. Patient, deliberate, impossible. I stopped at the edge of the fog, flashlight shaking in my hand. Shapes crouched at the tree line, bending, stretching impossible angles. My pulse thundered, breath shallow. Every instinct screamed to turn back. And then I saw it, a silhouette, just beyond the edge of the fog, half hidden by trees, leaning forward in a way no human should. Still, patient, watching. My heart slammed against my chest. I froze. The figure didn't move, but I felt its gaze pressing through the fog, through the darkness, into me. I forced myself to take a step closer. Nothing, just the sound of my boots squelching through the wet gravel. Static whisper in my radio, layered, warped. Closer, don't look away. I swallowed hard, throat tight. The figure remained, unblinking, impossible. I moved slowly, flashlight sweeping, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. Fog curled around the figure, thick and heavy, bending the light, hiding its details. Every instinct told me it wasn't human. Too tall, too thin, limbs bent in unnatural ways, crouching, stretching, watching, waiting. A twig snapped underfoot. The figure flinched slightly, almost imperceptibly. My pulse spiked. I wanted to run, but curiosity held me rooted. The figure didn't advance. It didn't retreat. It simply observed, patient, deliberate, impossible. I scanned the tree line with the flashlight. Shadows flickered, bending, crouching, impossible angles. Reflections shimmered in puddles along the road, mirroring the figure even when my beam didn't touch it. The fog pressed closer, curling around the patrol car, the abandoned vehicle, wrapping me in uncertainty. I stepped closer to the abandoned car. The figure mirrored me, crouched, bending, stretching impossibly, always just beyond clear sight. Static hummed in the radio, layered with faint whispers. Closer, closer. My pulse raced, breath shallow. Every instinct screamed danger. Every rational thought told me to retreat. And yet, I moved forward, step by step, boots squelching in wet gravel. The figure didn't advance, didn't flee, just waited, patient, calculating. The fog shifted, curling around it, bending, stretching. Reflections shimmered in puddles, bending my flashlight beam in unnatural ways. I glanced at the patrol car, engine still humming, headlights dim, doors slightly ajar, the abandoned car beyond. And then I realized the figure wasn't just in the fog. It was everywhere, reflected, pressing, watching, patient. I forced myself closer. The silhouette crouched low now, bending forward, impossible angles, limbs twisting in ways that shouldn't exist. The air thickened. Heavy. Breathing, it felt like inhaling water. Static in the radio, layered, warped, almost impatient. Don't stop. I shone the flashlight directly. The figure flinched slightly, bending impossibly, limbs folding, crouching low, stretching. Not human, not alive as I knew life, yet aware, patient, waiting, testing. A wet sound. Something sliding, brushing against gravel. I froze. The figure crouched, bent, stretched, mirroring every micro movement I made. Fog pressed closer, curling, thickening, alive. Reflections in puddles flickered, bending impossibly. I blinked. The figure was gone. Or had it just moved beyond perception? Static whispered again, layered, warped. Closer? Can't escape? My stomach churned. Panic pressed against my ribs. Every instinct screamed to retreat. But I couldn't. Something anchored me here. Something patient, deliberate, alive. I glanced at the abandoned vehicle. Doors open, engine humming faintly. Wet spots on the seats darkened. The coat, draped across the back seat earlier, gone. Scratches along the dashboard. Faint letters carved into the surface. Watch. The figure reappeared. Closer, leaning forward impossibly. Shadows bent at impossible angles around it. Reflections shimmered in puddles, mirroring movements I hadn't made. Static layered, whispering. Closer, don't look away. I swallowed hard, heart hammering, breath shallow. The figure crouched low, bending forward, stretching impossibly, always mirroring me, always patient. I realized with chilling certainty I wasn't approaching it. It was approaching me, patient, calculating, waiting for me to step into the next stage. A wet sound behind me, scraping deliberate. I spun. Nothing. Only fog. Only shadows bending, crouching, stretching. Reflection in a puddle flickered. The figure crouched low, leaning, stretching. Patient, watching, testing. I forced myself forward again, flashlight trembling. Fog pressed tighter. Shapes crouched at the edge, bending, stretching. Reflections mirrored movements I hadn't made. Static hummed, layered, whispering. Closer, closer. My pulse spiked. Breath shallow. The figure crouched, impossible angles, mirroring my movement, patient, deliberate, aware. I realized then, the figure wasn't bound by the road, the trees, or the fog. It existed in the space between perception, in the reflections, in the shadows, in the static itself. It was patient. It was deliberate. It was aware. And it was waiting. I backed toward a patrol car, heart hammering, breath shallow, but the figure mirrored me, patient, deliberate, waiting. I glanced at the abandoned car again, engine humming faintly, doors ajar, empty, yet I knew the presence lingered. Inside, outside, everywhere. The static hummed, layered, whispering my name. Parker. My pulse spiked, blood ran cold. The figure crouched low, bending impossibly, stretching impossible angles. Fog curled closer, thick, alive. Reflections shimmered, bending the light. Patient, watching, waiting. And then, in a moment of impossible clarity, I realized the figure wasn't just observing. It was learning, mirroring, testing, patient, deliberate, calculating. And I was trapped in its attention, its fog, its patience. I swallowed hard, gripping the flashlight. My breath fogged, heart hammering, patient, waiting. And I knew then with certainty that the night wasn't over. The figure wasn't finished. And the next step, whatever it was, would demand more than instinct to survive. The patrol car's engine hummed faintly, tires squelching against wet asphalt. Fog curled around everything, thick, heavy, alive. I gripped the steering wheel, Knuckles white, flashlight beam cutting weakly through the windshield. The lurking figure from the tree lean, it was gone. Or maybe it was just beyond perception. Patient, waiting, calculating. I tried the radio. Static, hiss. Then a whisper, soft, layered, almost coaxing. Don't leave. My pulse spiked. I twisted the dial. Nothing. Pure static. The fog pressed against the car like a living thing, curling through open windows, wrapping the vehicle in wait, silence, expectation. I started to drive. Slowly. Headlights barely piercing the gray. Every reflection in puddles shimmered unnaturally. Trees bent impossibly at the edge of vision. The radio hiss, whispers layered over static. Closer, closer. I swallowed hard. My pulse hammering, heart pounding in my ears. The figure, patient, deliberate, always aware, could be anywhere. Every turn, every stretch of road felt wrong. The fog curled tighter, shifting, bending. Shapes crouched at the edges of headlights, bending impossibly, stretching. I blinked. Gone. Just fog, just wet asphalt. But I could feel it. Watching, following, patient, waiting. Static intensified, layered, voices overlapping. Parker, can't escape. My hands trembled on the wheel. Breath shallow, heart racing. I tried calling dispatch. Nothing. Just static. Hissing. Whispering. The road stretched endlessly. Empty. Fog curling endlessly. I glanced in the rearview mirror. Empty road. Empty tree lean. But the weight of presence pressed against me. Heavy, patient. My pulse surged. The fog moved. Curling like smoke. Pressing closer. I realized in the figure, the footprints, the reflections, they weren't just outside. They were everywhere. In the radio, in the fog, in the reflections. Patient, waiting. I tried to focus on the road. My breathing shallow, pulse hammering. Headlights caught movement in puddles. Shadows bent impossibly. Reflections mirrored me even when I didn't move. Static whispered again, layered, deliberate. Don't look away. I swallowed hard. The patrol car hummed. Tires squelching, fog curling, bending, alive. A wet sound brushed the side of the vehicle. I spun, flashlight trembling. Nothing. Just fog. Just reflections in puddles. Bending, crouching, stretching. Patient. Watching. Waiting. Heart hammering. Breath shallow. I realized then I wasn't driving. I was being guided. Tested. Patiently. Deliberately, impossibly. The radio hissed again, layered whispers. Closer, can't escape. My pulse spiked. Eyes darting. I gripped the wheel tighter. The fog curled around the car like hands, cold, patient. Shapes crouched to the edges of vision, bending impossibly, stretching. Reflections flickered, mirroring movements I hadn't made. The figure, everywhere. I forced myself to drive. Slowly, carefully. Headlights barely piercing the gray. Every puddle shimmered unnaturally, reflecting impossible angles, crouching, bending. Static hissed in my ears, whispers layering over every thought. Don't stop. My stomach churned. Breath shallow, heart hammering. The fog pressed closer, alive, aware, and then silence. Pure, empty. My pulse surged in my ears. Radio dead. Fog thick, curling, bending. Reflections in puddles stagnant. Headlights dim. Tires squelching faintly. I realized the figure wasn't gone. It had never moved. It had always been patient, deliberate, everywhere, waiting. I gripped the wheel, heart hammering. The road stretched endlessly. Fog curling endlessly. Static whispered one final time. Alone! A shiver ran down my spine. I glanced at the rearview mirror. Empty road. Empty tree. And yet I felt it, patient, watching, waiting, impossible, deliberate. The patrol car hummed faintly, tires squelching, fog curling, shadows bending at the edges of headlights, reflections flickering impossibly. I swallowed hard, pulse racing, breath shallow. And then I realized the night was mine, but I was not free. Not yet. The figure, the fog, the static, all patient, deliberate, everywhere. The road stretched on. Endless. Empty. Silent. My pulse thundered. Breath shallow. Fog curling. Headlights dim. Tires squelching. And somewhere just beyond sight, patient, deliberate, impossible, the figure watched, waited, and the radio whispered my name. Parker? I swallowed hard. Fog pressed closer. Tires squelched. Headlights dim. Reflections flickered. Static hiss, whispers layered. Patient, watching, waiting. I realized with cold certainty that the night had only just begun. The stairs groaned under my boots, each step echoing louder than it should. I had followed the faint sound, rhythmic, deliberate, up to the second floor. Someone or something was pacing up here. The boards creaked in patterns, heavy and uneven, like deliberate footfalls. Yet when I stopped, they paused too, as if listening. The hallway was dark, only the patrol flashlight cutting a narrow path through the gloom. Wallpaper peeled in corners, damp patches spreading like shadows that moved just beyond the light. I felt it before I saw it. A weight, a presence pressing against my chest, pressing me back toward the stairs. My pulse raced, heart hammering in my ears. I called out, my voice shaking. Hello? Anyone there? The sound bounced off walls, swallowed by the darkness. Silence answered. Then a soft creak, one slow, deliberate step. My boots had barely moved, but the floorboards groaned again, somewhere just ahead, and I froze. I advanced, flashlight sweeping. Shadows twisted, elongated across the hallway. A faint odor lingered, metallic and wet, like something had been bleeding long before I arrived. The air thickened, heavy, damp, pressing against my skin. Each step made the boards protest, but they weren't empty. They moved as if someone unseen was pacing above me. I paused outside a door, leaning close, ear pressed to the wood. Nothing. The sound of pacing returned, now circling, moving faster. Heart hammering, I stepped inside. Empty. Floorboards bare, no footprints. Nothing disturbed. My flashlight flickered. A chill crawled up my spine. I swore I heard a soft sigh, almost like a whisper. The hallway stretched behind me, shadows bending impossibly, reflecting in dark corners. Each room I checked was empty, yet the creaking persisted, circling, always just beyond sight. I moved cautiously, heartbeat drumming, my senses strained to catch any hint of life. Footsteps, breathing, anything. But the rooms were lifeless. A soft knock echoed somewhere behind me. Not loud, deliberate, almost casual, yet it sent my pulse spiking. I spun. Empty hallway. Only shadows, warped in the corner of my flashlight. I could feel it. Something patient, deliberate, unseen, tracking me, pacing me, testing my nerve. I climbed higher toward the attic entrance. Floorboards groaned louder now, rhythmical, deliberate, echoing around the empty space. My flashlight caught a glint on the railing. Scratch marks, fresh, jagged. I swallowed hard. Whoever, or whatever, was up here, they had left a trace. Patient, watching, testing. I stepped closer to the attic door. It hung slightly ajar. Darkness inside pressed outward, thick, heavy, suffocating. Another soft creak, deliberate, pacing, closer. I raised my flashlight. Shadows danced along the rafters, twisting, nothing visible. Yet the presence was palpable, pressing, heavy. A low hum began in the background, almost imperceptible, like static. It echoed in the hallway, merging with the creaking. I froze. The floorboard beneath me shivered, bending unnaturally, as if the house itself was aware of me. Footsteps circled, always just out of reach, patient, deliberate. I forced myself to move forward, step by step. Each creak of the wood beneath my boots answered by a creak somewhere ahead, as if mirrored. My pulse spiked, sweat running down my spine. The darkness seemed to bend around the attic door. Shadows swirled, reflections flickering in angles that defied physics. Then a sudden pause. Silence. My heartbeat thundered. The pacing had stopped. I felt it. The presence, patient, deliberate, almost amused, testing me. I gripped my flashlight tighter. Slowly, almost hesitantly, I pushed the attic door open. Darkness swallowed the beam. Empty, no footprints, No sign of movement. Just empty, oppressive space. A single floorboard groaned behind me. My head snapped back. Nothing. The silence stretched, thick, suffocating. Yet the pacing had not ceased. It had simply gone unseen, shifting just beyond perception. Shadows shifted at the edges of my vision, bending impossibly, dancing in angles my mind couldn't reconcile. I stepped inside the attic. Cold, damp air pressed against my skin, musty, metallic. My flashlight caught a small detail, a faint smear along the floor, like something dragged. I bent closer. Nothing identifiable. My pulse hammered, breath shallow. The shadows around me flickered, bending. Footsteps, closer, circling, deliberate. I froze. The attic was empty, yet the presence was everywhere. Patient, watching, testing. I felt the weight of it pressing in, bending space around me, stretching the dark. My heartbeat thundered, breath short. The creaking continued, circling, now faster, like it was learning my rhythm, mocking my hesitation. I backed toward the stairs, flashlight trembling. Shadows bent impossibly at the edges of light. Floorboards groaned in a rhythm I could not anticipate. Presence patient, deliberate, aware. The attic itself seemed alive, twisting, bending in response to me. I glanced behind one last time. Empty attic. Shadows twisted in impossible shapes. The floorboards groaned once more, circling, deliberate. I descended slowly, boots squelching, every step answered by another. Somewhere unseen, somewhere patient. The hallway below stretched endlessly. Shadows bent at impossible angles. Floorboards groaned, reflecting movement I hadn't made. I swallowed hard. Patient, deliberate, waiting. Always testing, always pacing, always just beyond my sight. I reached the bottom of the stairs. Silence. The only sound, my heartbeat hammering in my ears. The attic loomed above. Shadows bent impossibly at its edges. Footsteps had vanished, for now, but the presence remained. Patient, deliberate, unseen, testing. I stepped outside, heart hammering, breath shallow, eyes scanning. The fog pressed against the house, curling around windows. Shadows twisted at impossible angles. The night had only begun, and upstairs, patient and deliberate, footsteps still echoed in rhythm with mine, just beyond perception. I stepped into the garden, flashlight trembling in my hand. Fog drifted low, curling around statues and flower beds like ghostly fingers. Something had changed. The statues, stone figures frozen in time, weren't where I remembered them. Their positions shifted, subtle but deliberate, as if they had moved while I wasn't looking. I swallowed hard, a cold shiver running down my spine. Soft whispers floated on the air, almost imperceptible at first, just a rustle in the leaves, a sigh over the stone. My pulse spiked. I strained to hear. He's here, he's watching. The words were layered, almost overlapping, coming from every direction at once. I spun. Empty garden. Fog thickened, curling over flower beds, snaking along the edges of the lawn. The whispers continued, weaving around me, circling, patient. Don't look away. I froze, every muscle tensed. My flashlight beam swung slowly across the yard. Statues seemed to shift again, tilting heads, bending slightly, almost imperceptibly. The garden was alive, or at least it felt that way, pressing, deliberate, impossible. I stepped forward. Footsteps squelched in the damp grass. My own, but then a sound beside me, soft, deliberate, matching my pace, though no one was there. My pulse hammered. I swallowed. He's behind, waiting. The whispers layered with the rustle of leaves. Shadows flickered in the fog, bending in impossible angles, reflections of things that shouldn't be there. I approached the first statue. Stone fingers curled over empty air. I shone the flashlight across the pedestal. Nothing unusual. But then, from the corner of my eye, movement. Another statue had shifted. The fog hit it, but the form, slight tilt of head, subtle bend, was unmistakable. My breath caught. Patient, deliberate, watching. The whispers grew louder, layering over each other. Can't escape. He's close. I backed away slowly, heart racing, pulse hammering in my ears. The statues seemed to shift as I moved, rearranging themselves in ways that defied logic. Every step I took, they mirrored, bending, tilting, positioning as if tracking me. I glanced toward the windows. Shapes moved behind glass. Shadows, faint but deliberate. The whispers came from everywhere, layered, patient, circling. "Don't leave! Don't look!" My flashlight flickered, briefly dimming, and in that instant, I swore a shadow crouched low, waiting to strike, disappear when the beam returned. I kept moving, heart hammering. The garden stretched endlessly. Statues twisted in impossible angles, reflections in puddles warped, bending, crouching. The whispers, patient, deliberate, seemed to follow me, floating in the fog, echoing from all directions. Closer, closer. A soft scraping sound came from the edge of the yard. I froze. Nothing visible. Fog thickened. My pulse spiked. The whispers overlapped with the rustle of leaves. He sees, he waits. My flashlight beam caught a small detail. A statue had turned its head to look directly at me. I blinked. When I looked again, it faced forward. Impossible. I stumbled forward, boots squelching, trying to map the garden in my mind. Every path twisted unnaturally, reflections bending, shadows crouching, fog curling as if alive. The whispers layered again, patient, deliberate. "Don't run, don't turn." My breath came shallow, heart hammering. I could feel it, the presence, everywhere, watching, waiting. Then silence, fog thick, statues frozen, shadows crouched, reflections still. I exhaled slowly, pulse hammering. Relief, but brief. I realized then, the whispers hadn't stopped. They were simply hidden, patient, deliberate, curling around corners, circling, impossible to track. I moved to the edge of the yard, flashlight sweeping. One statue, closest to the house, seemed off, the head, tilted slightly, eyes faintly glinting in the beam. I stepped closer. He waits! He's close. The whispers returned, layered, circling, deliberate. My pulse surged. A sudden breeze made the leaves rustle. I spun. Nothing. Only fog curling around statues, bending, crouching. The garden felt impossibly large now, stretching beyond my memory. Footsteps? My own? Something else? I couldn't tell. Presence patient, deliberate, everywhere. I shone the flashlight over the lawn. Statues appeared and moved again. Positions subtly different, tilting, bending. Footsteps whispered in the damp grass. I froze. He sees, he follows. My stomach churned. The fog, the shadows, the whispers. They were all alive, deliberate, impossible. I edged back toward the house. Statues seemed to tilt in my direction, reflecting movement I hadn't made. Whispers layered, circling, impossible to locate. "Don't turn!" He's close. My pulse hammered, breath shallow, heart racing. The night pressing around me. The garden was no longer a safe space. It was a trap, patient, deliberate, waiting. At the back door, I paused. Fog curling, shadows bending, statues impossible angles. The whisper crescendoed. "He's behind, can't escape." My hand shook on the door handle. I exhaled, swallowed hard. The yard, once familiar, had become alien, impossible, alive. I stepped inside, heart hammering, pulse surging. Fog pressed against the glass. Shadows bent impossibly at the edges. Statues outside appeared to tilt their heads, waiting. The whispers faded just enough to let me think I was safe. But the tension remained, thick, patient, deliberate. I realized, with chilling certainty, that the garden had changed, not just in layout, but in essence. Statues, fog, shadows, they weren't merely objects. They were patient, deliberate, watching, waiting. And tonight, I had only glimpsed their true form. The house felt heavier now, oppressive. Upstairs, boards creaked. Outside, whispers lingered, curling around windows. Every reflection in puddles, every shadow in the fog, every subtle movement, patient, deliberate, impossible, reminded me that I was not alone. And somewhere, just beyond reach, the garden waited, patient, deliberate, watching. I was at the kitchen window when I saw it. At first, I thought it was a trick of the fog, a reflection of the streetlight bouncing off the glass. But the shape solidified, a face, pale, pressed lightly against the pane, eyes dark and endless. I froze, breath catching in my throat. I blinked. It was gone. Nothing but the fog curling along the yard. Statues frozen, shadows bending at impossible angles. My pulse hammered. I leaned closer, hand brushing the glass. Cold, my own reflection stared back. But for a heartbeat, I thought I saw those eyes again, dark, patient, deliberate. Waiting. I stepped back, heart racing. The wind whispered through cracks in the frame, carrying soft rustles from outside. Whispers or memories, I couldn't tell. And then it happened again. The face, brief, impossibly close, vanishing the instant I reached for it. My breath fogged the glass as I pressed closer. Empty yard, fog curling around statues, shadows bending. No one. I circled the house, flashlight trembling, every window a mirror, every reflection a trap. The face appeared again in another pane, closer this time, just beyond reach. I swore I could see a faint smile, patient and deliberate. My pulse surged, the air thickened, pressing against my skin, damp and metallic. I tried calling out, voice shaking. Who's there? No answer, only the faint rustle of leaves, the fog curling in impossible patterns. Statues outside seemed to shift again, tilting heads, bending fingers, subtly observing. And windows, they watched back, the face vanished, leaving only distorted reflections, impossible angles, teasing me, testing my nerve. I edged closer, pressing my hand to glass. Cold seeped into my skin, a slow, crawling dread. The face returned, closer still, eyes hollow, patient, deliberate. I could almost feel its breath, hear its faint whisper. Here, watching, my chest tightened, heart pounding. I stepped back, hand trembling. The room behind me felt alive. Shadows bent unnaturally, reflections warped. The fog outside thickened, curling around the yard like ghostly fingers. Statues, frozen in stone, tilted their heads ever so slightly, as if following me, tracking my every move. Patient, deliberate, waiting. I moved to another window, desperate to catch it, to see if it was real. The face appeared again, now faintly pressed into glass, vanishing the instant I approached. Each time it returned closer, just beyond reach, teasing, deliberate. My breath came shallow. The house itself seemed to breathe with it, creaking softly, floorboards groaning in rhythm with my pulse. I glanced at the foggy yard. Statues bent impossibly. Shadows crouched where they shouldn't. Footsteps? I couldn't tell if I'd made them, or if something else paced the garden. Whispers curled through the fog, patient, deliberate, circling the house. Don't turn, don't leave. My pulse spiked. The face returned. I reached for a flashlight, trembling. Beams swept across the yard. Statues appeared moved, shadows twisting. Reflections and puddles warped impossibly. The face, pale, patient, deliberate, appeared in the glass of the back door. I froze, eyes hollow, endless. I dared not approach. It vanished as I stepped closer, leaving only fog curling, shadows bending, statues tilting ever so slightly. I backed away, heart hammering, pulse surging. The house seemed to contract around me, oppressive, alive, aware. Footsteps above, pacing, deliberate. Whispers outside, layered, impossible to trace. And the windows. They hit it, showed it, teased it. Patient, deliberate, watching. I realized then this wasn't random. It was testing me. Each glimpse, each vanished moment, each distorted reflection was deliberate. It wanted me to see, to fear, to chase. And I did, heart hammering, breath shallow, moving from window to window, caught in a loop of glimpses and vanishings. The fog thickened, curling around the house. Around me, statues tilted, shadows bent, whispers circled. The face appeared once more, this time pressed firmly against the glass. Hollow eyes, impossible stare. I reached out, nothing, cold glass, fog curling, shadows bending, the air thick with presence, patient, deliberate. I stumbled back, heartbeat thunderous. mind reeling. The garden seemed impossibly alive. Statues bending, shadows crouching. The whispers layered, circling, impossible to locate. He watches, he waits. My pulse surged. The face had left only its mark in my mind, lingering, impossible to shake. I circled the house, flashlight sweeping. Each window a mirror, each reflection a trap. The face returned in the corner of my vision, vanished when I turned fully. I realized with chilling certainty. It could appear anywhere, anytime. Patient, deliberate, watching. The fog pressed closer, curling around the walls, around the yard. Shadows crouched, twisted, impossible angles. Statues tilted, whispers circled. The house itself seemed alive, and in the glass, just at the edge of my vision, the face lingered, patient, deliberate, impossible to confront fully. I forced myself to breathe, pulse hammering, hands shaking. The garden, the yard, the house, all of it alive with presence. Shadows bending, statues shifting, fog curling. And the windows, the face returned, teasing, hollow, endless. Patient, deliberate, watching. I backed into the house, heart hammering, breath shallow. The fog pressed against the panes, curling around corners, shadows bending impossibly. The statues outside tilted their heads, eyes glinting faintly in the mist. And somewhere, patient and deliberate, the face waited for me to look again. I rounded the corner and hit the first signal. Red, then green, then nothing. The light blinked once, went dark, leaving the intersection bathed only in the faint glow of the fog and the street lamps overhead. The streets were empty, too empty. Usually, even at this hour, a lone car or a distant pedestrian would stir somewhere. Tonight, there was nothing. Silence pressed in, thick and heavy, almost liquid against the patrol car windows. I eased forward slowly, tires whispering over wet asphalt. My hand hovered over the radio. Dispatch hadn't said much, just a routine check on traffic lights malfunctioning across town. But something in the air didn't feel routine. The streetlights flickered like hesitant eyes, uncertain whether to stay awake or shut down entirely. I glanced at the cross streets. Normally, a few cars would have passed, engines low, headlights slicing through the mist. Nothing, just empty asphalt stretching in every direction. Even the familiar neon of the diner on the corner seemed off, dull, lifeless. I felt my pulse quicken, slow dread crawling up my spine. The air smelled faintly metallic, like rain mixed with something older, heavier. The intersection loomed ahead, the fog thickening like a wall. I slowed, instinct prickling. Something about the emptiness felt deliberate, unnatural. My flashlight swept across the sidewalks as I stepped out, boots wet on asphalt. No sign of life, not a single shadow, no stray newspaper drifting, no humming neon humming in its usual way. Just quiet, the kind of quiet that isn't quiet at all. It waits, listens, moves. I checked the nearby parking lot. Empty, every vehicle accounted for. Even the patrol car behind me seemed louder than usual, engine ticking, tires wet, as if protesting the unnatural stillness around it. I shook off the feeling, told myself it was a power outage or maybe a glitch. But then I noticed the traffic signals again. One blinked green for a second, then red, then flickered violently like a strobe. My stomach twisted. I remembered the reports, malfunctioning lights across the city, but this felt more immediate, personal. My pulse thumped in my ears as I peered into the fog at the intersection center. Nothing moved, yet I felt watched. Not a glance from a passing car, not a reflection in a window, just a presence, patient, deliberate. A subtle vibration ran along the asphalt, almost like footsteps echoing in rhythm with my heartbeat. I spun, flashlight sweeping the foggy streets, but saw nothing. Then I noticed the crosswalk stripes. They seemed wrong. The lines stretched impossibly, curving subtly, as if the asphalt itself had shifted while I wasn't looking. A trick of the fog, I told myself, but the sensation of being off balance, of the world slightly tilting, stayed with me. I moved cautiously across the intersection. Footsteps echoed faintly, but when I paused, nothing responded. The air was dense, every breath sticky, like the night itself was pressing against my lungs. I felt the fog curl closer, almost around me, though the wind was still. Suddenly, the street lamps flickered out entirely. Darkness swallowed the intersection, leaving only the faint green and red of the malfunctioning signals blinking erratically. My hand tightened on the patrol car door, pulse hammering. The fog thickened into sheets, curling along the asphalt, obscuring the lines of the street, the familiar shapes of the neighborhood. I realized with a shiver that the intersection, the streets, the city itself, everything was bending subtly and impossibly. A crosswalk that should have ended in a curve now faded into the mist. Streetlights blurred and stretched. The fog moved in patterns, deliberate, curling in shapes almost human, almost alive. A car engine hummed somewhere behind me. I spun. Empty street. No headlights. No one. My heart lurched. The hum grew, distant but pressing, a low vibration through the soles of my boots. I raised a flashlight, scanning the fog. Nothing. The street stretched endlessly in every direction, bending, curling, impossible to map. The traffic signals blinked again. Green, red, flicker, blink. I realized I didn't know which way was forward anymore. Every street seemed to curve into nothing, fog thickening with every step I took. I called dispatch. Silence. Static. Then a faint, delayed voice. Proceed with caution. My pulse spiked. The voice distorted, delayed, warped. It wasn't anyone I knew, and yet it was familiar. I moved forward, cautious, every instinct screaming. The asphalt beneath my boots seemed to shift, subtle vibrations echoing in patterns that weren't mine. The intersection was no longer just empty. It was alive, patient, observing. Every blink of the traffic light, every flicker of the street lamps felt like deliberate signals, a pattern I couldn't understand. I pressed the radio button again. Static, a whisper, distorted, overlapped with the interference. Don't stop, my heart hammered. I looked around. Empty streets. Fog curling impossibly. The city stretched beyond reason, bending and shifting with every heartbeat. I had no sense of distance, of direction. Every familiar landmark seemed subtly altered, patient, deliberate. The intersection ahead shimmered in the fog. The traffic lights blinked violently. Green, red, and I could swear I saw shapes moving just beyond the mist. Not cars, not people. Shadows, elongated, twisting, bending in impossible ways. My pulse surged. I took a step back. Then the street lamps came back, weakly, and the shapes were gone. Just fog curling along the asphalt. The intersection was still empty, too empty, but the feeling remained. Patient, deliberate, watching. The world around me had shifted, subtly, impossibly. I knew I wasn't imagining it. I exhaled, trying to steady my pulse, scanning the streets. Signals flickered, fog curled, and I felt it. Presence, patient, deliberate, waiting. The intersection had changed. The city had shifted, and I realized with a cold certainty that nothing about this night would be normal again. The lights blinked once more. Green, red, green, and in that flicker, I swore I saw something standing at the far end of the intersection, waiting, patient, deliberate, watching. I was driving cautiously down the fog-laden street when I saw the headlights. At first, I thought it was another car coming toward me, the familiar glow cutting through the mist, but the angle was wrong, too wrong. The lights were moving backward, slowly, deliberately, down the empty road. My pulse spiked. I slowed. No engine sound. The vehicle moved as if on its own, tires whispering over the asphalt. Yet no shadow of a driver could be seen. I raised my flashlight, sweeping it over the windshield. Empty, totally empty. A shiver ran down my spine. Something about the way it glided, silent, deliberate, felt intentional. Waiting. I hesitated, debating whether to approach. My radio crackled with static, then a faint, warped whisper. Watch behind! I turned my head sharply. Nothing. The fog thickened. Headlights still reversed, inching closer, yet retreating at the same time. It made no sense. My chest tightened, each breath shallow, ragged. The street itself seemed wrong. Familiar buildings loomed at impossible angles, Windows skewed, shadows stretching, and the vehicle, headlights cutting to the fog like eyes, moved not on the road but slightly above it, hovering almost imperceptibly, deliberate. I swallowed, gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. I stepped out of the patrol car, flashlight sweeping. The beams from the unknown vehicle flickered across the fog, illuminating street signs I didn't recognize. Every reflection felt wrong. Asphalt shimmered as though breathing, bending subtly beneath the tires. I tried to call dispatch again. Static. A faint voice hissed through, "Don't follow." My heart skipped a beat. The headlights reversed faster now, pulsing rhythmically, almost as if alive. I squinted. In one flicker, I could swear I saw a shadow inside, a form sitting where a driver should be. But then it dissolved into nothing. Empty glass. Empty seats. And yet, the car moved as if guided by unseen hands, deliberate, patient, watching. I moved closer, flashlight cutting through fog, hand trembling. Each step felt heavier than the last, air thick and metallic in my lungs. The vehicle slowed when I approached, then reversed again, matching my pace. I stumbled backward, heart hammering. Its lights glared at me in a way that felt sentient, not mechanical. I tried the horn. Nothing. Pressed harder. Still nothing. The headlights blinked, pulsed, almost communicating. A slow, deliberate signal I couldn't decode. I stepped around a patrol car, trying to flank it, find an angle, any angle. Each step shifted the fog, curling in impossible patterns, almost like fingers reaching toward me. The vehicle reversed faster, then stopped abruptly in the middle of the street. I froze. The headlights glared, not just illuminating the fog, but cutting through it, piercing the night in impossible ways. And then I noticed something chilling. The street around it shifted, lines of asphalt bent subtly, curving in ways they shouldn't. Familiar surroundings were unrecognizable. I glanced inside the empty windshield again. Something moved, or thought it moved, but it left no shadow, no trace. My pulse surged. The fog thickened, curling around the tires, around me, around the empty streets. Every instinct screamed to run, to leave, but my legs felt heavy, as if the night itself was pressing against them. A faint whisper carried on the wind. "Come closer," I froze. Voice warped, distant yet intimate, impossible to locate. The headlights pulsed. In one flicker, I thought I saw a figure sitting behind the wheel, then gone. Empty glass. The vehicle's presence lingered like a pulse in the night, patient, deliberate, watching. I stepped backward, tripping slightly over the curb. Heart pounding, I stumbled, flashlight sweeping frantically. The car moved again, backward, slow and precise, following me in the fog. No engine, no sound except the subtle, rhythmic pulse of its lights. The street beneath shimmered with impossible angles, bending subtly, impossibly, as though the world itself was tilting. I called out, voice shaking. "Who's there?" Static swallowed the words, then a warped, echoing hiss. "Don't leave." I turned sharply. Nothing. Fog thickened. Shadows curled unnaturally, stretching over sidewalks, wrapping around street signs. The car, backward, empty, patient, hovered just beyond reach. I inched closer again, trying to understand, to confront the impossible. Headlights pulsed, flickered. For a heartbeat, I saw movement inside, a figure leaning forward, stretching, reaching, but then it dissolved into nothing. Empty seats, empty street, and yet I knew I hadn't imagined it. The vehicle's presence was deliberate, alive, impossible to ignore. I stumbled back, tripping again. The headlights pulsed, brighter, almost laughing, almost breathing. The fog twisted, wrapping around the vehicle, around me. I realized the lights weren't just moving. They were guiding, herding, manipulating the empty streets. Patient, deliberate, watching. I tried to leave, engine roaring, tires gripping wet asphalt. But the road bent again, impossibly, curving in ways that made no sense. The headlights mirrored me, moving backward, blocking my path, guiding me deeper into fog. Every instinct screamed to escape, yet my body was caught, drawn into the night. Then, in one flicker of light, I saw it again, the figure inside, faint and impossible. Eyes hollow. A face that wasn't human, yet familiar. Patient, deliberate, watching, and then gone. Just headlights pulsing in fog. The street bending, twisting, impossible, alive. I swallowed, breath ragged. The vehicle moved backward again, slow, deliberate, almost as if waiting for me to follow or stumble. And I knew, with chilling certainty, that I wasn't in control anymore. Not the street, not the patrol car, not the night. Something else guided it. Patient, deliberate, watching. The fog had thickened to the point where the patrol lights barely cut through it. Every street corner I recognized had vanished, replaced by curves that shouldn't exist, roads folding back on themselves like a painting stretched too far. GPS said I was on the highway, but the map spun endlessly, a circle that never ended. I gripped the wheel tighter, feeling my knuckles whiten, heartbeat hammering in my chest. I turned onto what I thought was the main road. A sign flickered in the fog. Highway 42. I blinked. A few seconds later, the same sign appeared again, identical, unchanged, as though I had circled back. My pulse spiked. I shook my head, muttering under my breath, trying to rationalize it. Maybe the fog was thicker than usual, visibility low, shadows playing tricks. But instinct screamed otherwise. Every turn I took led me to another intersection I didn't recognize. The lines on the road twisted subtly, curling into mist. Streetlights leaned at impossible angles, casting long shadows that moved against the wind. I tried call dispatch. Static, no response. The radio hissed and warped, faintly whispering syllables I couldn't understand. My fingers hovered over the mic, trembling. The fog was alive, not just covering, but moving, curling, almost guiding me along. I blinked, and the highway stretched endlessly forward, yet behind me, the lights I thought I'd pass were gone. The road shifted subtly under tires. Each curve felt deliberate, calculated, like the asphalt itself was alive, reshaping the world around me. Then headlights appeared ahead. At first, relief surged. I wasn't alone. But the relief evaporated instantly. The vehicle's shape was distorted, edges bending in the fog. It moved slowly, matching my speed. I sped up. It sped up. I slowed. It slowed. It mirrored me, patient, deliberate, watching. The pulse in the fog seemed to sync with my heartbeat, every breath thick with anticipation. I tried to focus on something familiar, a signpost, a tree, anything, but nothing remained consistent. Every landmark seemed slightly wrong. A tree that should have been to my left appeared to my right in the next blink. Shadows twisted against the fog, long fingers brushing over the asphalt. The headlights ahead pulsing rhythm with my pulse, glowing, retreating, returning, impossible, hypnotic. I slammed the brakes, fog curling around the tires. The vehicle ahead halted too, lights glaring like eyes. I exhaled, hands shaking. A low hum vibrated through the asphalt, subtle, almost imperceptible. It resonated with a patrol car, a warning, or maybe an invitation. My chest tightened. Something in the fog was alive, waiting, deliberate. I realized I wasn't following it. It was leading me, bending me along paths I didn't understand. Then the highway seemed to split, curving impossibly left and right at the same moment. GPS spun wildly, static screaming in my ears. My headlights reflected off the fog, illuminating shapes ahead, distant, elongated, impossible. My stomach twisted as I realized they weren't trees, not entirely. Figures stretched along the roadside, patient, deliberate, watching me. They vanished whenever I tried to focus, only to appear again further down the misted curve. I swallowed hard, heart racing. The fog thickened, almost tactile, curling into the car vents, brushing my arms. I tried to keep moving, to follow the road, to escape the bending, impossible shapes. But the asphalt below shimmered subtly, twisting like water. Every instinct screamed to stop, to get out, but the fear of standing still was stronger. Something was guiding me, patient, deliberate, omnipresent. The radio hissed again. Words distorted, warped. Don't leave, follow. Can't return. My pulse spiked, breath hitching. I spun the wheels slightly, headlights cutting through the fog. The shapes ahead blurred, Bending into forms I couldn't name, shadows slithered along the road's edge, impossibly long, impossible angles. I realized I had no sense of distance, of direction, of time. The highway was endless, folding upon itself in ways I couldn't comprehend. A faint movement caught my eye, a figure at the fog's edge, impossible to define, humanoid but wrong. It stepped forward and vanished, leaving no trace, no reflection, nothing. The headlights ahead pulsed violently, and the fog swirled as if alive, curling toward me, around me, through me. Every nerve in my body screamed. I was alone, but not alone. The road, the fog, the shadows, they were aware, patient, deliberate, watching. I tried the horn. Static. Nothing. I shifted gears, tires slipping over wet asphalt, but the curves only multiplied. Every exit led to another identical road. The fog thickened with every mile, curling higher, pressing in, making it hard to see the asphalt beneath. My headlights barely reached a dozen feet, and yet I felt observed, every blink, every breath, synchronized with the pulse of the highway. I exhaled slowly, trying to steady my shaking hands. The patrol car's interior felt unreal, too quiet, too heavy. Outside, shapes moved in the fog's edge, vanishing, reappearing, patient, deliberate. Every instinct screamed that I shouldn't move, yet standing still was impossible. The highway had become a living maze, endless, bending, impossible. I caught a reflection in the rear-view mirror. Nothing, empty road behind, but in the side window, fog curled like fingers, and I swore I saw a shape following, moving in impossible alignment with the patrol car. Heart hammering, I blinked and it vanished. The highway stretched endlessly ahead, curves multiplying, fog thickening, impossible shapes at every corner. The radio hissed again, whispering, warped. Never end follow. My pulse raced. I realized I had no idea if I was heading toward something or away. The fog had consumed every landmark, every reference point. The highway bent and curved with intent, patient, deliberate watching. And I knew, with chilling certainty, that I would not reach the end, not tonight, not ever. I exhaled, voice shaky. Where is this road leading? No answer, only fog curling higher, headlights pulsing ahead, shadows stretching impossibly along the curves. I gripped the wheel tighter, knuckles white, eyes straining. The highway was alive, impossible, deliberate. I was moving forward, following, yet I wasn't in control. The fog, the curves, the headlights, they were leading me deeper into the night. And then in the pulse of the fog, I thought I saw a city skyline, familiar, impossible, flickering. But before I could focus, it vanished. The highway bent again, endlessly, fog thickening, curves multiplying. My pulse hammered in my ears. I realized I didn't know where I had started, where I was, or if I could ever leave. The highway stretched forward, patient, deliberate, alive. The fog curled around a patrol car, shapes twisted at its edge, impossible, watching. I exhaled slowly, voice shaking, whispering to the empty road. This isn't real. And yet, every sense, every instinct screamed that it was, and it had me exactly where it wanted. The moment I started my shift, the night felt wrong. Not in a way you could immediately name, but in the subtle way a shadow lingers just out of sight, reminding you that you're not alone. The streetlights flickered as I cruised past the empty intersections. A chill crawled up my spine, brushing the nape of my neck, and I found myself gripping the wheel tighter, telling myself it was just the wind or fatigue. Then the radio crackled. Dispatcher's voice, calm as ever. Unit 42, proceed to 7th and Elm. There's movement you should notice. I frowned. There was nothing there. Elm Street was empty. The street lamp stretched into the fog, lonely columns of yellow light. Unit 42, be advised, someone appears at the corner, wearing a dark coat. I blinked. My hands tightened. I see nothing, I said. Silence, then static. A pause. Keep driving, they'll follow if you stop. I glance around. Empty streets. Windows dark. Trees swayed with a wind I couldn't hear. And yet, I felt eyes on me. Heavy, patient, deliberate. My pulse kicked up, slow and creeping, a heartbeat out of sync with reality. Dispatcher continued, narrating things I hadn't yet witnessed. A figure stepping from the shadows, a shape that moved along the curb, a whisper just beyond the fog. How could they know? My fingers hovered over the mic, cold sweat forming, and I kept driving, trying to convince myself it was routine, a miscommunication. Fog began curling along the road, dense and alive, like it had a rhythm of its own. Each streetlight haloed it differently, shadows twisting and stretching. Then I saw movement. Across the corner of my eye, a figure, tall, thin, coat dark against the mist, vanished the moment I turned to focus. Dispatcher's voice came again. Don't follow, don't look away. My stomach twisted. The words weren't instructions. They were warnings. I realized with a pit in my gut that the night itself had a consciousness, watching, reacting. The patrol car's headlights barely cut through the fog. Every turn of the wheel felt wrong, as if the streets themselves curved just enough to disorient me. Dispatcher described sounds. Footsteps on wet pavement, soft, careful, circling the car. I strained my ears. Nothing but the hum of the engine and the occasional drip from overhanging branches. Yet the sounds existed somewhere in periphery, teasing my sanity. The voice continued, narrating event a half-second before I saw them. The shiver of movement, the figure at the curb, the darkness leaning closer. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe it was a glitch in the system, a prank, or maybe fatigue was fracturing reality. But my gut told me none of that mattered. The night had rules I didn't understand. I kept moving, each mile heavier than the last. Dispatcher's voice grew more urgent. Unit 42, look behind you. They're closer than you think. I glanced in the rearview mirror. Fog stretched endlessly. Nothing visible. Still, the feeling of being followed pressed against my chest. Relentless, inescapable. I turned another corner. Fog swirled like smoke caught in a slow whirlpool. Then I saw a shadow detach itself from the fog. A shape humanoid but wrong, stretched, elongated, dissolving and reforming with each blink. Dispatcher narrated again. They're at your left door, watching. I froze, gripping the wheel, sweat dripping down my temple. I could feel the presence, but no one was there. My own reflection in the window was the only answer, and yet the reflection moved differently, twitching, leaning in a way I did not. The car radio hissed, a static chorus threading through the voice. Unit 42, don't let them see you turn. The words are distorted now, warped like a memory I couldn't trust. My hands shook, the fog curling closer, pressing against the headlights. Every instinct screamed pull over, to leave the car, but a force, weightless but undeniable, kept me moving forward, deeper into the narrated nightmare. Dispatcher's voice narrated my hesitation, my heartbeat, my breath. As though aware of every internal struggle, I reached a deserted intersection. Streetlights flickered violently, painting the fog in bursts of yellow and gray. The figure appeared again, more defined this time, just at the edge of the lights. Dispatcher narrated the step it took before I even saw it, the tilt of its head, the deliberate patience. My chest tightened, air sharp in my lungs. I pressed the accelerator gently, watching the shadows shift in the periphery, staying, following, never overtaking. Questions raced through my mind. How did they know? Who or what was guiding the night? Each narrated detail added to the dread, layering fear atop fear. I realized that I wasn't in control. The night moved me. The fog shaped my path. The radio predicted every heartbeat. I began to wonder if reality itself was bending, if my patrol car was a vessel in a world that obeyed its own rules. Detached from mine, another corner, and the figure was gone, vanished into the fog. A brief relief washed over me, shallow but tangible. I exhaled, heart pounding, but the relief was fleeting. Dispatcher's voice whispered again, "They're closer, listen," and then I heard it, a soft, rasping, careful, circling the car, almost imperceptible. I strained my ears. The fog thickened, curling around the tires, pressing along the sides of the vehicle. My pulse matched the rhythm of something unseen. The voice continued, telling me things I did not want to know. Every turn of the wheel Every blink of the eyes, every breath I took was narrated before I even acted. Fear spiraled into something else, something deeper, a dread that settled like lead in the chest. I realized I wasn't alone, and that the night itself was alive, orchestrated, patient, deliberate. Every instinct screamed to escape, yet every road led deeper, folding impossibly, endlessly, into the fog. I gripped the wheel tighter, knuckles white, breath shallow. Dispatcher narrated again, "Unit 42, do not stop. They will see if you hesitate." The shadow, or what I assumed was a shadow, reappeared at the edge of the headlights. My stomach churned. I didn't know what it wanted, what it was, or how long it had been waiting, only that the night was alive, and I was trapped inside its narrative. Every intersection now felt identical, every sign a repetition, every light flickering. The fog wrapped tighter around the car, curling it on itself, alive, deliberate. I realized I had no sense of direction, no timeline, no control. The radio whispered again, a low, distorted chorus. "They're inside, they're watching, you never left." And for a split second, I felt it, the weight of unseen eyes inside the car, moving with me, guiding me. I exhaled slowly, trying to calm my shaking hands. The shadow lingered at the edge of perception. Dispatcher continued, narrating the next steps, events I hadn't yet reached, the path ahead unfolding like a story written without my consent. I realized then, fully, that the night itself had become a storyteller, and I was both the audience and the character, trapped in a narrative I could not escape. And still, I drove on, pulse hammering, mind spiraling. The fog curled around the headlights. Shadows danced just beyond sight, and Dispatcher's voice continued to narrate, patient, deliberate, haunting. The night moved with intent, and I knew, deep down, I would not reach the end, not yet, not tonight, not ever. The road stretched ahead, empty and slick with rain, headlights cutting through a mist that never seemed to end. I gripped the wheel a little tighter, a stubborn reassurance that I was still in control, but the mirrors told a different story. My reflection flickered, twitching in ways my body did not. Sometimes it leaned too far forward, sometimes too far back, as if mocking me or warning me. I tried to focus on the road, blinked, and caught movement in the rear view. Another me, another self, sat there, pale, staring directly at me, eyes too wide, too knowing. I jerked my head, swearing that it vanished. The fog outside curled, folding it on itself, but the mirror remained. That other me, trapped behind the glass, watching, waiting. My pulse rattled in my chest. Every puddle along the road became a lens, a window into impossible angles. I could see the side of the car I wasn't looking at, the wheel moving on its own, shadows where none should be. Headlights glinted off the wet asphalt, stretching long and thin like fingers. I shook my head. Surely my eyes were playing tricks. Fatigue, the lingering dread from last night's shift. But the reflections continued, insistent, undeniable. Then a flash, side mirror, rear view, puddle reflection, all showing me looking the wrong way. A hand that wasn't mine brushed across the steering wheel. I froze, heart hammering. My eyes darted around the car, but it was empty, and yet the mirrors told a different truth. Something, some presence, had slipped inside, just behind my perception. Dispatcher's voice, or maybe just my memory, flickered in my mind. "Unit 42, don't trust what you see." I tried to rationalize it. Couldn't be real. Mirrors lie. The mind lies. Yet the reflections weren't lying. They were revealing something I couldn't comprehend. The night stretched and warped, roads bending in impossible curves. Reflections moved independently, showing angles that didn't exist in the real world. I caught glimpses of a passenger I had not invited, a figure sitting silently in the back seat, only visible in the glass. Every turn brought another distortion. Streetlights twisted, elongating into impossible arcs. Fog pooled in corners of mirrors that had no corners. I blinked, and the other me, my trapped reflection, tilted its head, whispering silently, urging me forward. My stomach knotted. I wanted to slam the brakes, run, tear the mirrors away, destroy the car. But every instinct was paralyzed, held hostage by the mirrored eyes that followed me relentlessly. A curve in the road revealed a puddle reflecting a house, I had never passed. Its windows glowed faintly, warm against the cold night. In the reflection, the front door opened slowly, though no one approached. Shadows danced inside, long, thin, bending unnaturally. I looked up at the actual road. Empty, no house, nothing but mist, and yet the reflection didn't lie. It had a story to tell, and I was trapped inside it. I pressed on, heart pounding, knuckles white on the wheel. The mirror showed subtle changes in my surroundings, ones my eyes couldn't detect. Street signs that weren't there, trees bending in impossible angles, fog clustering like sentient beings. Every puddle reflected not just the road, but other versions of me, multiple shifts in reality stacked together. The air inside the car grew thick, oppressive, and the scent of damp asphalt and something faintly metallic filled my nostrils. Another flash in the side mirror. My reflection grinned, an expression I had never made. I jerked my head. Gone. Only the empty road ahead. I dared not look into the rear view again, yet I couldn't stop stealing glances. Each reflection revealed something new. Shadows that shouldn't exist. Movements that defied physics. And in each, my other self stared back, calm, knowing, patient. A passing car appeared in the distance, headlights dim and wavering. In the puddle next to the road, its reflection was reversed, backward, moving as if the laws of time bent around it. I swerved slightly, heart racing. The tires hissed against wet asphalt. Dispatcher's voice echoed faintly in memory. Unit 42, don't let them catch what's real. I didn't understand what they meant, or who, or what, but the warning settled in my chest, heavy, insistent. The road twisted again. Mirrors, puddles, windows, all showing subtle differences. The car's interior seemed older and the reflections worn, decayed, though everything inside the cabin was intact. I leaned forward, gripping the wheel, breathing shallowly. I couldn't escape the eyes of my mirrored self, watching every twitch, every blink, every pause. And I realized with cold certainty, the reflections weren't just reflections. They were warnings, invitations, threats. All at once, the night pressed against the glass. Fog pooled around the tires, thickened at the edges of puddles, reflections of shapes not present. Figures crouching just beyond headlights, stretching impossibly, reached toward me. I wanted to flee, but my car felt anchored, magnetized to the road and the reflections themselves. Every instinct screamed that I was no longer driving. I was being driven. By what? By who? I didn't know. Then I noticed a detail I had missed. In one puddle, my reflection waved, a slow, deliberate motion I had not made. My stomach sank. The hand I saw in the glass hovered over the steering wheel, ghostly, translucent. A whisper echoed in my mind, low and patient. You can't leave? I blinked. Alone again. The figure vanished from the puddle. Mirrors, side and rear view, showed only my normal self. And yet I felt it. Presence. Patient, near, unyielding. I pressed on. Every road now twisted with the same impossible curve. Every reflection offered subtle variations of reality. I glimpsed my own face in puddles, eyes wider than they should be, breathing uneven. The figure in the back seat, visible only in glass, tilted its head, observing. I clenched my jaw, shook my head, focused on the road. But focus did nothing. Every intersection, every mirror, every glimmer in the puddles reminded me I was no longer alone, that the night was alive and the reflections weren't lies. They were gateways, hints, warnings. The other self in the glass, silent, patient, endless, was waiting for me to understand what I already feared, that I was trapped inside the reflection of reality, caught between what was real and what was shown. A final flash, long and sharp. In the rear view, my mirrored self spoke, not with words, but with intent. A message I couldn't escape. You are not here. I exhaled slowly, shaky, gripping the wheel like it was my last tether to sanity. The reflections continued, relentless, showing impossible angles, impossible truths. Fog pressed around the car. Puddles glimmered with secrets, and my mirrored self waited, patient, ever watchful. The road stretched endlessly ahead, but I knew, deep down, it was no longer a road. It was a labyrinth, and the mirrors were guiding me through it. I hadn't realized how long I'd been driving before it started. The road stretched ahead, slick with rain, empty, silent. But the car didn't feel empty anymore. A subtle shift under my hands, a pressure against the wheel made me glance down. Nothing. The dashboard was untouched. The wheel wasn't moving on its own, yet I felt it. Presence. Weight. Breathing in the air I alone should have occupied. The first time it touched my hand, I flinched. Just a brush. A ghost of a finger against my knuckle. My heart leapt, but I forced myself to stay calm. Maybe it was exhaustion. After so many hours on night shift, after the fog, after the strange reflections in mirrors and puddles. Maybe. But then the wheel jerked slightly, subtly, and I realized it wasn't exhaustion. Someone, or something, was holding the car with me, sharing the seat, invisible, patient. I tried speaking aloud, voice trembling. Hello? Who's there? Only the hum of tires on wet asphalt answered. Nothing moved, nothing showed itself. And yet, the sensation persisted. A hand, sometimes brushing against mine, sometimes hovering over the console unseen. My own reflection in the rear view seemed tense, muscles taut, eyes darting, mirroring my fear before I fully recognized it. I slowed the car, scanning the empty road. Fog pressed against the headlights like smoke, curling and curling, until I couldn't see more than a few feet ahead. A thought struck me. Maybe it wasn't malicious. Maybe it was trying to guide me. But then the steering wheel twitched again, just as I passed a bend, nearly sending the car into the shoulder. My pulse raced. This was no guidance. This was possession. A warning. Every puddle reflected more than the road. In one, I saw it. A silhouette sitting where no one could sit. Half-formed, shadowy, faceless. It mimicked my posture, but twisted at the elbows, impossibly long arms brushing the wheel. I jerked back, fingers tightening on the leather, and the figure dissolved into ripples across the water. My reflection, normal, stared back at me with silent accusation. You see it too late. I tried talking again, rationalizing, demanding answers. Who are you? What do you want? Silence. The only sound was tires cutting into the rain-soaked asphalt, and my own ragged breathing echoing inside the car. Then a whisper, almost inaudible at the edge of my hearing. Not yet. I froze. My head swiveled, searching for a source. But the seats were empty, the cabin untouched. Still, the pressure remained. Heavy, patient, oppressive. Turning the radio on didn't help. Static filled the speakers. Nothing else. But sometimes, buried in the white noise, I thought I could hear it. Soft breathing, a subtle rustle, a movement just behind my shoulder. I shook my head, telling myself it was fatigue. But the wheel nudged slightly again, left and right, subtle but undeniable. Someone or something was steering with me, invisible, always just outside the edges of perception. I tried slowing down, pulling over. The fog thickened in response, curling around the car, sticky and heavy. Brakes squealed against wet asphalt. I gripped the wheel, mind racing, eyes darting. And then I felt again, a hand just resting on mine. Weight, warmth, insistence. My stomach turned. My pulse hammered. My reflection in the rear view caught me staring at nothing. A silent scream frozen on my face. The passenger was real. Real enough to touch. Real enough to command. I considered abandoning the car, running into the mist. But the road stretched endlessly, empty, with no shoulder to escape to. The fog seemed to anticipate my movements, curling, folding in, blocking exits, hiding turns. It was guiding me, along with the invisible passenger. Every instinct screamed to flee. Every instinct screamed that fleeing was impossible. Then came the touch at my back. My spine stiffened. The seat pressed down, heavy, as if someone had sat behind me. I swung my head. Nothing. But every reflection, every puddle on the road, every shifting shadow in the fog confirmed it. I was not alone. Never had been. Never would be. I tried reasoning, telling myself it was hallucination, stress, fatigue. But the steering wheel twitched again, lightly, deliberately, nudging me toward a curve. My reflection in the side mirror was alert, eyes wide, following something invisible. My heart sank. I realized the figure was teaching me something, or testing me. or maybe warning me. But what? I didn't know. Couldn't know. The rain fell harder, drumming against the roof, masking soft whispers in the cabin. I thought I heard breathing, soft and patient, close enough to brush my ear. Goosebumps rose along my arms. I glanced around. Empty, and yet the wheel moved. Pushed subtly, nudged, insisted. My reflection in the rear view watched my panic, mirrored it, amplified it. I could feel the presence, coiled around me, inside me, merging with me in a way that chilled me beyond reason. At a fork in the road, I froze. Neither turn looked safe. The fog thickened, curling inward, blocking both exits. Then the steering wheel moved decisively, right hand nudging, left hand pressing back. The figure, whatever it was taking control, and I had no choice but to follow. My pulse pounded, my breath ragged. I felt my own body betray me, moving with the unseen passenger's will. Minutes or hours passed. Time stretched and folded like the fog outside. Every puddle, every mirror reflection hinted at other presences, other realities stacked on top of this one. The unseen passenger guided me along roads that defied reason, roads that twisted, looped, led nowhere and everywhere at once. And still, the hand rested lightly, persistently, on mine. Finally, the fog thinned slightly, revealing lights ahead. My relief was brief. Reflections in puddles and mirrors no longer matched reality. The road ended in the shape of my house. Front door glowing faintly. Car parked where it had never been. I jerked the wheel. No! I shouted, but the hand on mine pressed subtly, insistent. I obeyed, almost hypnotized. As I approached, my reflection twisted in the rear view, an expression I hadn't made. The figure leaned forward, faceless, patient. I realized with a shiver, this presence had been guiding me home, or had it been guiding me into a trap? I couldn't tell, couldn't see, couldn't know, but the invisible passenger had proven one thing. I was no longer driving. I had never been driving. The car stopped. I exhaled, shaking, fingers still gripping the wheel. No one was visible in the cabin. The road was silent, empty, yet I could still feel the presence. Patient, lingering, waiting for the next move. I opened my eyes fully, staring into mirrors. Nothing, just reflections, just fog, just the invisible passenger, gone for now. And as I stepped out, rain soaking me to the skin, I realized the truth. I had never left the car. It had driven itself, guided by a presence I couldn't see, understand, or escape. And in the back of my mind, I heard that patient whisper again, soft, insistent. Not yet. The house came into view like a mirage, the wet asphalt reflecting the dim glow of the porch light. I thought I was home, safe at last. Relief pressed against my chest, slow and heavy. My hands were numb, fingers stiff from gripping the wheel for hours I couldn't measure. The fog had lifted, or maybe it had just receded for now, but the lingering sense of being followed hadn't left me. The invisible passenger, had it gone? I didn't know. I parked in the driveway, engine ticking as it cooled. Every instinct screamed that something was wrong, though my tired mind tried to argue it away. I was home. Lights, walls, the familiar hum of electricity. Normal, safe, yet the air felt charged, thick, like a storm had passed and left an electric residue. My reflection in the rear view mirror wasn't mine alone. Shadows curled where they shouldn't, a subtle stretching of darkness that made my stomach twist. I opened the door, fog breath mingling with the cold air, and froze. There I was, or rather, there I wasn't, slumped in the driver's seat of the car. Asleep, body limp, eyes closed, the uniform soaked and slick. My pulse hitched, my mouth went dry. I had been inside the car the entire time. How had I walked here? My mind stumbled over itself, trying to make sense of the impossible. The note on the windshield caught my eye. Simple, chilling, written in a hand I didn't recognize. You never left. My fingers trembled as I picked it up, paper damp, edges curling from the rain. The words burned themselves into my memory. Never left. My head spun. I glanced at the house behind me. Empty, silent, normal. Yet every instinct told me that something had followed me. Something patient, deliberate, waiting for me to notice. I leaned back against the car, trying to steady myself, trying to breathe, trying to remember if any of it had been real. The night, the fog, the steering wheel twitching under invisible hands, the reflections in the puddles, the mirrors, the shadows twisting unnaturally. Every heartbeat reminded me that the impossible had been real, and it hadn't stopped. Not fully. Not yet. I reached for the door handle, shaking. Each step toward the house felt like moving through molasses, the world stretching and folding, bending subtly. Inside, the lights flickered once, a brief pulse, as if the house itself had noticed my presence. I froze, listening. Silence. Normal silence. But I knew better. I had been guided here by something. Something invisible, patient, persistent. And now it waited, hidden, coiled, ready to continue its watch. My reflection caught me again, this time in the window of the front door. Not quite mine. Something off. Something wrong. The eyes stared back, familiar yet distant. A shadow pressed behind them. I blinked. It was gone. I told myself it was imagination, fatigue, the aftereffects of hours spent alone on wet roads with fog curling into every corner perception. But deep down, I knew the truth. I had never been alone. I tried to convince myself to move, to enter the house, to pretend that normalcy existed. But the note burned against my palm. You never left. Those words weren't just a warning. They were a statement, a truth I couldn't escape. My mind replayed every moment. The wheel twitching, the invisible passenger pressing on my hands, the impossible roads, the reflections, the whispers and static. Every detail now took on a new weight, a new horror. I stepped closer to the car, hand brushing the damp hood, and saw it again. Faint fingerprints on the windshield. Not mine. Subtle, pressed lightly into the glass, curling along the edges where I couldn't have reached. The invisible passenger had touched the world in ways I hadn't noticed. Presence left traces, proof, evidence of something patient, deliberate, and waiting for the next shift, the next drive, the next moment when I thought I was safe. I considered leaving the note where it was, walking back to the house as if nothing had happened. But my instinct screamed that wasn't enough. I had to see. I had to confirm. I slid open the car door where my doppelganger slept, damp uniform sticking to leather, and leaned over, voice trembling. "Are you me?" No answer. Only the sound of rain, dripping slowly from the roof, tapping against asphalt, a heartbeat I wasn't sure belonged to me. I shivered, stepping back, unsure whether to feel relief or terror. The figure inside the car remained still, serene, yet utterly wrong. Every instinct screamed. It wasn't me. It was something else. Something that had shared the road, the car, the night, and now it sat patient, silent, as if marking time until I realized the truth fully. Then I noticed a faint smudge on the dashboard near the passenger seat. Damp, slightly sticky. A handprint. Not mine. Not part of me. Another presence. Perhaps the same invisible passenger, leaving traces, teasing reality. Every logical thought unraveled. Every memory of the night twisted. I couldn't be certain what had happened, what I had done, or what had been done to me. I backed away slowly, wet shoes squeaking against asphalt, and glanced at the road behind me. Empty, silent, normal, almost, but the memory of the wheel nudging, the presence pressing, lingering hands brushing against mine, the subtle whispers. I couldn't shake them. They were real, tangible, proof of a reality I wasn't meant to understand. I turned toward the house, finally trying to leave the car and the note behind. Yet the words echoed in my mind. You never left. I realized that it wasn't just about that night or the roads or the invisible passenger. It was about every shift, every drive, every moment when I thought I was alone. Had I ever truly been in control? Had I ever truly left? Or had I been guided all along, a passenger myself in my own life, always trailing behind something unseen? Inside, the house was dark but ordinary, normal. Even the lights flickered briefly, as if acknowledging my presence, then steadied. I exhaled, long and shaky, trying to calm the racing of my pulse. Yet the sensation of being watched didn't leave. It lingered in the back of my mind, a patient shadow at the edges of perception. I left the car and note behind, finally stepping fully into the house. The warmth of indoor air was almost comforting, but I couldn't shake the image of myself slumped in the driver's seat, asleep yet awake, real yet not. I shivered again, realizing that the night had followed me home. The invisible passenger may have left the car, but it had not left me. Not fully. Not yet. And somewhere, just behind the veil of ordinary perception, I heard the softest whisper, a voice I couldn't place, a presence I couldn't see. Not yet.